Welcome to the George Show on 710 KNUS. Happy Tuesday to you, the 26th. It is a big happy birthday to my dad. There's no chance he's listening at this hour, but maybe on the podcast. Love you, Dad. Hey, it is a privilege and an honor to bring on our next guest. You've heard him before right here on these very airwaves, just at a different time than the morning show. His name is Mark Levin. Sir, thanks for joining us.
And happy birthday to your dad, George.
Yeah, nice he's going to love that, sir. Thank you. Now I don't have to get him anything. Thank you so very much. Now you have a book. I don't know that I've seen this happen. I don't follow the whole bestseller thing, but it debuted at #1 on Amazon. Your new book, The Democrat Party Hates America. How do you do that? How do you have a book debut at #1 before you even get it out the door?
I don't know. I just do what I do. But I will just tell you this. I think the book's very, very important. I've written a lot of books. I think this is the most important because it's one thing to talk about principles and ideas and our founding. It's another thing to pull it all together and then point the finger at the entity that's trying to destroy them. And I think what's different about this book is I not only do a very deep dive into history, but I go into some of these scholars who a lot of these Democrats listen to and read that I and maybe you and our audiences weren't familiar with, so they know what's actually taking place behind the scenes with these folks. And so it's really very interesting. I'll tell you what's interesting to me, George. I was talking to my wife about this morning. This book's been out for a week, 8 days, give or take. It's been #1 on Amazon. There's not a single liberal columnist, not a single liberal network, not a single liberal reprobate has said a damn thing about it. And the reason is, I don't think they want Democrats to read this book. I'm quite honest about this, because when you look at the history of this party, it is such a vile, vicious, bloodlust party. I mean, we wouldn't have had a civil war but for this party demanding slavery. We wouldn't have had segregation for over 100 years but for this party. We wouldn't have lynching but for this party, or Jim Crow but for this party. We wouldn't have eugenics but for this party. The resegregating of the military and the resegregating of the bureaucracy under the Democrat Party. And now it's sort of in a chameleon way, it's done a flip because it doesn't believe in American principles that will do anything for power. And that's what people need to look at this, the Democrat Party, through the lens of power. Why do you think the border's wide open? It's destroying the country. They don't care. They want to destroy the country. Or this war on capitalism, this massive centralization and industrialization policies they call climate change and the Green New Deal. These are nothing more than hardcore socialist industrialization policies that are destroying our economy. You see what it's doing to the dollar, the interest rates, inflation, food, utilities, gasoline. This is what happens when you have centralized Soviet-style management of the economy, which we have going on full force now. So I get into it and I explain why they're destroying the family, because in the Communist Manifesto, Marx said the family social structure is one of the greatest obstacles to this paradise that they want to create, because they will not easily succumb to it. And so now you see what their teachers' unions are doing and what they're doing in the classrooms. So people need to understand these school districts are government institutions, government facilities. The unions are bought and paid for by the Democrat Party and vice versa. 2.5 million precinct workers. So go through this piece by piece by piece. Anti-black racism, anti-white racism, thought control and language control, which is what you need if you're going to control a society. And so I'm hoping, I think the book reads very smoothly, almost like a novel, even though it's not a fiction. I put together the puzzle pieces of what's going on, and I put the blame finally after 10 books where it belongs. It's the Democrat Party. I could never write a book, George, that says the Democrat Party loves America. What do they love about America? They never tell us what they love. It's always about fundamental transformation. As I've said on my show, if you're married and you want to fundamentally transform your wife or your husband, well, that tells me you don't like them very much.
Good luck.
So yeah. That's what's going on. Yeah, good luck with that too.
Sir, let me ask you this. We all have a friend, probably a relative, maybe even a neighbor that we're fond of on a bunch of different levels. We all root for the Broncos and pray that they figure out a way to play the game again. This is probably a good book to get them for the holidays or something. But when you talk to them, they don't see the Democrat Party through that lens. Is the end goal for the party then, is it just the power? Is there a point in time where they can point to and say, this is where we're trying to take the country? And if that's true, how do these people that we love, that we care about, that maybe we even have some sympathy or pity for, how do they get sucked into this?
They get sucked into it because every tyrannical regime sucks people into their prophecies, into their promises, in their very ambiguous goals. And so they say healthcare for all. Well, what does that mean? It means healthcare for none, really. When they talk about, everybody should have equity, what does that mean? Well, equity means everybody should have the same thing because they didn't start out the same way. So that gives the central government police powers and an iron fist that it ought not have. And even more than this, I think, if you see what's happening to the country today, unless you're Helen Keller, you're blind to it and you can't hear it and you can't smell it. You're missing what they're doing. I mean, what they're doing today is part of what they've been trying to do for 100 years, the centralization of power, the destruction of judicial independence, to change the electoral college and get rid of it. So basically, the East Coast and the West Coast,
Right.
for the most part,
Right.
be thrown in Chicago, can control the vote, and on and on and on. These people are not for the Constitution. They're for the 1619 Project. They're for critical race theory. One cultural issue after another. They are attacking, they're devouring them, and then they're using the political party as the means by which to not only retain power, but to retain it for as long as they possibly can. They want to fundamentally alter the Supreme Court, fundamentally alter the Senate. They want to fundamentally alter how we vote. Well, why do they want to do all these things? Is it better for the country? No, because it empowers the Democrat Party, and the people can look. The border's wide open. New York and New York City are furious. Some of these cities are furious with it. They don't care. They know they're going to get those votes because these people who vote Democrat, as your point, many of them are the zombie-like. What I'm saying is if we can get Thomas Paine had a pamphlet for 2.5 million people in this country, and 200,000 people read it. We don't need that many people, but if some people would read it and pass the word, that's our power. An army of independent thinkers to talk to their family, their friends, their colleagues, and say, hey, wait a minute, that's not true. Or, hey, wait a minute, let me tell you the real history of this party. Or, hey, wait a minute, let me tell you what's really going on here and who's responsible for it. It doesn't take a lot of people to influence a lot more people. And that's why I think it's important.
Well, we're talking with Mark Levin, author of the Democrat Party Hates America. You hooked me back in the day with Men in Black. So I made the mistake
That's the first one.
I know I made the mistake of getting into the law like you did. And so instantly I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. And it was. For this particular book too, we're at a time, and I'm stepping back just a little bit from the details of the book, but asking you to help me explain this to others. We're at a time when it looks obvious to me that we are short of Joe Biden tapping out. We are setting up for Biden-Trump part 2. And I've had a bunch of folks on this air and others suggest, they're like, well, wait, authoritarian. They're like, well, what about Donald Trump? What about his claims recently even? What about him wanting to go after Comcast or MSNBC? What about him talking about a revenge tour and all this? How do we distinguish for them the concerns that are raised by Donald Trump and supporters versus this overarching notion that the party, the Democrat Party, as you know, wants to instill a top-down view of governance?
All right, well, let's look at it this way. Can anybody name one thing Donald Trump did to attack the Constitution? Just one. Oh, January 6th. Well, we can get into that debate till we're blue in the face. He offered 10,000 troops, and he left office peacefully. That's much I know. But let's wind it back a little bit more. What did Donald Trump do to defy the Supreme Court? This president today has defied it at least twice, including with the student loan program and also with the resegregation of colleges and universities, which are discriminating against Asian Americans. Biden's working with these Ivy League schools to continue to do it. Biden's just handed out $400 billion in violation of a Supreme Court rule. He hasn't enforced our immigration laws. He's violated our immigration laws, which course, in my view, is an impeachable offense. And you can go down the line with this guy, with his executive orders destroying Title IX. Title IX is part of the Civil Rights Act, and so he's destroyed women's sports, and he's issuing executive orders like lollipops left and right. And the massive bureaucracy does not have the power to tell people they have to take vaccines, and yet he did that too. And even Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, I have it in the book, said, this is shocking what was taking place and is taking place. And the biggest censorship effort in American history, well, maybe except for the Civil War, has taken place and is still taking place under this president. So can somebody tell me what Donald Trump did that even comes close to this? I can't think of a single thing, because if he did, I wouldn't be a fan of his or Ron DeSantis or anything else. I mean, it's one thing to talk. It's quite another thing to do. And the Democrats do this all the time. They don't like the country. They don't like the Declaration. How many times did Barack Obama, when he read the Declaration, cut out the chunk about our Creator? How many times have the Democrats talked about fundamental transformation? The Obamas did, Bernie Sanders does, excuse me, Biden does, Hillary Clinton does. And the fact is, I counted up, there are almost 15% the Democrats in the House are Democrat socialists, which means Marxists, by their own claim. That's a lot of people. And so when you look at this, this is a party. I write in the book, the Republican Party has a lot of weaknesses. For most part, it is lazy. It is ineffective in so many ways. It doesn't know how to deal with this. It doesn't even understand that this is occurring. It kind of goes along. But the Democrat Party fundamentally does not accept this country. They had a two-term president by the name of Woodrow Wilson. He's only the second two-term president they had at the time, the Democrat Party. And he was one of the great intellectuals behind this whole so-called progressive era, which was nothing more than the American Marxist era. You don't have that in the Republican Party. The Republican Party is a party. The Democrat Party is more than a party. It is an autocratic organization, like all over the world, that wants to devour and has the bureaucracy, wants to devour the voting system, wants to change the nature of citizenship. In other words, it wants to do what it says it wants to do, fundamentally alter America, and it's doing it.
Your sense, Mark, before I know your schedule is just really rough. So last question. Any chance in your mind legitimately that it's not Biden Trump again? I mean, are they going to, given these recent polls from ABC, Washington Post, is this all trying to nudge Biden out of the race or to set the stage for Newsom or somebody jumping in?
Biden doesn't. If Biden wants to be the nominee, he's the nominee. Despite all these columnists and everybody else in polls, it doesn't matter. There's really no way to take him down, particularly as it gets later and later. That's number one. Number two, Newsom destroyed Ronald Reagan's California.
Yeah.
Colorado's close enough to California to see what he did there.
Yep.
He's destroyed it in every way. The schools, the budget, the culture, everything. Everybody used to want to move to California. They're going to lose 5 congressional seats in the next census, at least 5. That's a net 4 million people. Even when you count all the illegal aliens, which apparently the government does under the census, that is an enormous vote of people with their feet. And so why they keep promoting this guy who does his best Bill Clinton hand motions and all the rest of that, I don't know, but he is a disaster. That said, if Biden wants it, he gets it. If Trump wants it, he gets it. I mean, assuming there's not health issues or something like that.
Right.
I don't know, but it seems to me it's hard to defeat either of them.
I would at some point, and I'm going to keep listening to the show, I would just love to hear the breakdown and the analysis on these different indictments, the 4 cases. I've done my own thoughts on it, but man, you've been doing this at such a high level for such a long time. I wish I could keep you all hour. Mark Levin is the author of The Democrat Party Hates America. You can hear him right on these airwaves all the time, just not when I'm on the air. I would ask you to tell us where people can get the book, but honestly, Mark, there isn't any place I can find you can't get the book. Is there some place it's not? Is it not at 7-Eleven or something? Because it's everywhere.
I will just tell you what's interesting is it's not mentioned in a single liberal column, a single liberal platform. They're not even attacking it or criticizing it. You want to know why, George? You're a lawyer, you're a prosecutor, and so on. I wrote this thing to be impenetrable when it comes to their history. They don't want to talk about their history. They don't want to talk about what they're doing. And if they do, then I can engage. So my suggestion is you go to Amazon.com and get it tomorrow. Any major bookstore, Costco, Walmart, all these warehouse stores, they've all been extremely generous. They've all acquired many copies of the book if people want to get them.
I'd say give it to a Democrat that you love. If you care
I
about
agree.
someone, give it to them and at least let them engage you on the conversation after they've read it right there. Listen, I love having you on. The first part of the show, honestly, I'm going to have Billy, my producer, clip that, and that's going to be my dad's new ringtone. Mark Levin saying happy birthday to my dad. I think
What's his name?
It's mine. It's George Brauchler. He's just the senior. He's just the big guy.
There you go. Happy birthday, George Sr.
Hey, thank you so much. Mark Levin, radio host extraordinaire, author of a bunch of books, but the latest one, the bestest one, The Democrat Party Hates America. Sir, I'll talk with you very soon, I hope.
Me too. God bless. Thank you, buddy.
Take care,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
Hey, listen, I can't think of a better time to break. I don't know that Billy and I could have any conversation that would do anything other than to drag that one down. So we're going to cut away for a break. We'll come back. We'll probably do a little bit of banter, and then we'll get right into the good stuff. That is the Thorpe Report, followed by You Choose the News. I don't know what we do with all this extra time, Billy, once we get it. Maybe during the break, we'll take a nap or something like that. Great interview. I am honored to have had Mark on the show. I've had texts, by the way, you should know, few people already just, I love Mark. I ordered the book. The book is on the way. It's just fantastic stuff. Mark Levin, The Democrat Party Hates America. George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. My thanks to the great one, Mark Levin. He's the author of The Democrat Party Hates America. You can get it, I think, everywhere on the planet Earth. If you just Google The Democrat Party Hates America, it's the first 100 things, several screens into it, including reviews and whatnot. Although he's right. I can't find any libs out there who are going to give it any attention, probably because they're freaked out about other people being drawn towards it. But you can definitely get that book. Alexa texted in, I don't believe that was Mark Levin. He did not scream at all. And maybe it's just because we caught him in the morning. Also, and Joan, nice little love with a heart emoji on there. I got to thank Mark Levin, too, for giving a shout out to my dad, on his birthday here. Dad is 81, which I find so freaking hard to believe that he's 81. I look back when he was my age, which is 35. And no, I'm kidding. That would have made him have kids really, really late in life. That when he was my age, and all the kids were much older. My oldest is in her junior/senior year of college. I was graduating law school when my dad was my age. So it makes me feel like I started much later. But happy birthday, Dad. I promise we're going to get together. I know this weekend's tough because I'm out of town. Last weekend was tough because boys had some family stuff out in SoCal. But we're going to figure out a way to get everybody together here for Big 81. If it was 80, of course, it's much different because that's a big round number and it's more special. 81, it's, what is that? Steve Watson number right there. I mean, 81's a great number, Dad. Don't get me wrong. And I'd love for you to get to 100, 120 if that's possible, but we'll definitely do something there. Listen, this is that part of the show. Normally we don't have this kind of time. In fact, I'm a little freaked out about the pacing. Billy could now do the Thorpe Report.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of news stories.
Damn it, Billy.
I know. I didn't think that.
Nope.
Oh,
yeah,
well.
I probably should have said
longer.
something.
Yeah, I thought Mark was going to go longer.
If I could have I thought Mark would go shorter. Honestly,
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be 10 minutes and then, hey, punk, I'm out. But he stuck around, and I thought it was a nice conversation. Nonetheless, I'm ceding over to you control of the comms. What you do with that time is really your own fault. I don't know. You're on the hook. So let's get to it.
Now I can do the Macarena with hand farting. I'm so sorry.
Those aren't your hands.
Yeah.
That's unless you're watching Rumble or YouTube, you have no. Anyway, let's turn it over to Willie for the Thorpe Report.
Thank you, sir. Well, today 84 degrees, plenty of sunshine. Tomorrow, mostly sunny. Highs of 85, and then warm and dry 87 on Thursday. We do have increased winds and showers possible coming into our forecast over the weekend, but that's still several days away, and the weather people don't know what they're doing, so we'll see what happens. Over the weekend, 4 pedestrians hit and killed by drivers in the metro area.
God!
I know, and the crazy thing is it's a 2 days in Colorado roads, part of a larger trend, according to the Colorado Department of Transportation. 111 pedestrians were killed on Colorado roads, making up 15% of the state's total traffic fatalities. It's not just in the last year or so. According to Sam Cole, the traffic safety manager for CDOT, we've seen an increasing number of pedestrians killed in the state of Colorado, double over the past decade. So far this year, double. So far this year, we've got 81 that have died in Colorado. That's compared to the 111 last year. Does not include the 4 people over the weekend. So simple math brings us up to 85. That's about 12% more than this time last year. Yeah. Some of the areas in which we are seeing the biggest increase: Jeffco, Pueblo County, El Paso County, are seeing double-digit increases in pedestrians being run over by the automobiles.
Is in the article, is there any reference to what they attribute that to? I mean, is it people jaywalking? Is it drunk drivers?
A little bit of is it more they slide into distracted drivers, people just not caring. And yeah, sure, the pedestrians being stupid and walking out in the roadways at times. But evidently the pedestrians thinking that they have some sort of magic bubble around them, and the drivers not watching out, that we're just more distracted and we're busy doing crap.
Well, we have talked about this several times off the air too, and that is the right of way does not defeat physics.
Not at all. So that's a problem. So yeah, so we're just running people over lots. Elsewhere, a man convicted of shooting and seriously injuring a Littleton police officer sentenced to more than 100 years in prison yesterday. Yep. He received a 128-year prison sentence for shooting Officer David Snook in September of 2021. On that night, Littleton police officers responded to a call of shots being fired from a car window on West Powers Avenue and South Bannock Street. When officers arrived, they saw the individual walking away from the scene. He then took off running toward an apartment building, pulled a handgun, firing multiple rounds behind him. According to the DA's office, Snook was struck by the gunfire in his torso, arm, and leg and passed away. So, yeah.
Did it say at all what he was charged with?
No. Well, it did. It had a long list of stuff, but I didn't cut that because it was a long list. I just wasn't going to read a long
just
list.
So folks understand how the broken Colorado Department of Correction system works, and because we have the time based on what you've said,
Yes,
otherwise I wouldn't jump in here. 128 years is completely fake in that even if it's most likely a sentence to a crime of violence, some type of attempt murder or something like that. 128 years spends more like 50%. And that means that this guy will serve about 64 years. Now, a lot of folks will be like, 64 years in prison? Who serves 64 years in prison? Not very many people. Like you have to do 64 years in prison before you're parole eligible. You're probably leaving feet first. That's true. But 128 is fake. And we've just got to do something about this, folks, because the big numbers don't mean anything. The other thing that nobody knows about, and I'm just now talking with someone in the media about this, they asked about this, there are these ridiculous rules where if someone serves 2 years on, let's say, a 6-year prison sentence, they get paroled, they go out and commit some other crime, they get prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced on that crime to run concurrent with the last sentence, they get credit for the 2 years that they'd already served before they. Yes, can you imagine before they failed parole?
I found the list of stuff he was charged with: attempted first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, extreme indifference, aggravated robbery, prohibited use of a weapon, assault with a deadly weapon, first-degree assault, extreme indifference, first-degree assault on a police officer, and violent crime sentence enhancer.
The violent crime one is the one that makes it more like 50%. In the statute, it says 75%. That is fake. Keep in mind that there is a ballot issue that is going to be on in, I believe it's 2024, that is going to be a truth in sentencing bill for thugs like this that will mandate serving 85% of your time. No credit for hugs and kisses and coloring books, and you didn't shank your cellmate or anything like this. You are going to do 85% minimum. That's going to be on the ballot next year. One other thing about this, you heard extreme indifference, Billy Reed, extreme indifference. Be very aware that the folks under the Gold Dome are going to target that likely this session to lower that an entire class of felony, so that extreme indifference murder, like the stuff that the Aurora Theater massacre guy was convicted of, is no longer life without parole. It is now a parolable offense at 48 years max, which, if you do the math, is really 24 years. That's what's coming.
Ouch.
And see how we took that story and we just stretched it out into 2 minutes of banter. Woo!
Nicely done. Elsewhere, deputies involved in the 2022 shooting of Christian Glass have a little more than a month to consider plea deals offered by the 5th Judicial District. On Monday, judge set up November 2nd disposition hearing for former Clear Creek deputies Andrew Boyne and Kyle Gould. Spokesman for McCollum, the judicial district attorney, Heidi, said that didn't have any more details on the offers, but they indicated the offers were given to the defendants last week. Also, city crews are preparing today to sweep up a homeless encampment at 8th and Logan in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, part of Mayor Mike Johnston's homelessness initiative, aiming to get 1,000 unsheltered people off of the street. On Monday, members of the community spent the day packing up and loading their belongings on a bus. Maybe some of them are at the overpass here, Parker Road.
Gosh, buddy.
Yeah, they're already setting up again.
Every damn day.
There's another big giant tent.
The industry that they show to creating this little village, this garbage village, if they could just find a way to apply it to any other paid occupation, they wouldn't be homeless.
Yes, that's the thing, is I keep looking at the idea that they're able to craft these entire, living spaces and areas, and they gather these things. I'm like, don't tell me you're not motivated. You got motivation. You can do some of this stuff. Can we just direct it in the right way? It just, well, okay.
I don't know, man. I don't know, but I feel like we should do a remote from there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm gonna stay here. You go. You can go. I'm here just fine.
Maybe we could get Gmo.
Yeah, there we go.
Maybe Gmo would be willing to go down and just interview them. Yeah, just hand them the microphone and, hey, I'm in a nice warm place with room temperature coffee.
Yes. Oh, okay. And finally, San Juan Basin Public Health Department said a lab testing confirms that the plague was associated with the death of a person in Archuleta County.
Wow.
Yeah, State Department said 16 human cases of plague have been reported within the last 10 years, according to, and including 3 fatalities. Last fatality before this one was 2021. So yeah, we're going back in time, baby. We're bringing back the plague. We're going retro. We're not going to have any of these new, none of these new COVID type diseases. No. We're going with the classics.
No. Hold my virus. Watch this.
Yeah, we're going with bubonic plague, leprosy. Really good stuff.
The good stuff.
Yeah,
the old stuff.
That's
I wonder if we're going to go the rivers run red, the toads,
nice.
the whole thing, locusts, all that stuff.
Would be good.
Why the toads and locusts? By the way, is it because it just freaks people out?
Yeah,
Is
I think so. I think so, and that's Yeah, why would you go that first?
I don't know. Of all the things, like if you had giant attacking squids, like in the Bible, why locusts and frogs and stuff like that?
I know.
Like, couldn't you just
werewolves?
A monster?
How about werewolves?
Werewolves would be awesome.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Imagine if the Old Testament was filled with werewolves.
It would make the movies much more fun.
It would make the movies very different, I'm sure, right there.
Much different.
Billy, nothing uplifting about any of your stories today. Was that by design, or is that just what existed?
That's pretty much that's life here in Colorado at this point. Yeah, not a lot of uplifting stories.
We're seeing the very first encampment in Denver wiped out in exchange for housing, hotel rooms, and all that other stuff.
Yeah,
I want so desperately for it to be successful because I do root for the Queen City. I think I am a believer, and this isn't just gut reaction. This is stuff that I've read, things that I've seen online, an entire book called San Francisco or Sicko. Housing first just doesn't work. Now, this is more than just housing first. It's housing first with wraparound services and stuff. Maybe, I don't know, but buddy, I don't know. Nothing we do seems to make a difference.
I hope he can pull this off. And I hope that because he's using, as you talked about it, the wraparound services in addition to the housing, rather than just saying, now you have a home.
Yeah.
Good luck. I'm hoping that these services and I think the security, and I think that's going to be a key to it too. If they can provide security as well, both between resident on resident violence, but also, to protect the local community as well. I think that is a huge step. And I think that's a better step for areas in the local community to be more welcoming. It's going to be very difficult to get these micro communities into areas, but the idea that they're providing security so that they're not just letting them run around the neighborhood, etc., and that there is going to be on-site security, I think is going to be a huge, huge step forward. I want it to work. I want any of this stuff to work.
I do too. I want it to work.
Just find something. I mean, we've seen things like Step Denver that have very nice success rates, but we're not looking at that as far as a federal program. I just want one of these programs to work, please, because I'm tired of throwing money at it.
I want something to work. And I'm a fan of Mayor Johnston on a personal level. I want it to be successful, but I need the transparency he promised to. And that is, if bad things are happening in these micro towns or whatever it is, we got to know, whether it's the drugs, the rapes, the robberies, the other violent crime. But if they're not happening, I want to know that too. I mean, we want to know what works and what doesn't work. And you always worry about a big new step like this, the desire to suppress any bad news because it might derail anything that we might have. But I just hope that's not what's going to take place.
I hope not, because as we know, growing up and also having kids as parents, that you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. So when and if the mistakes are made and things happen inside the communities, that is an opportunity to make it better and to learn from it and to change the processes, procedures, and how it's set up. So I'm hoping that is a learning experience and that they don't come out and say, no, we can't tell them the bad news because it's going to derail it, rather than take it and say, this is something we just learned. So now we're going to enhance these communities and make sure going forward, this process is better. That's the way to do it. But I'm hoping. I'm tired of throwing money at it.
And are we going to now see micro homes under the overpass here, or are we going to actually move them on to the mall?
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be happy if they moved it over to the mall.
Frankly. I'd be happy there too.
I don't understand what's the attraction to this space, Billy. You can put your mind in the body of a homeless person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do that often. The part of it is you're close to some major arteries. And so there's opportunities for begging as far as money. Also, you have the opportunities to stay relatively hidden per se, because the overpass. Only a few people use that overpass because it's a Parker Road, so you're not going to be seen there. And if you look at where they set up the tents, normally they're not totally hidden, but they will try to be hidden from about, at least 180 degrees or a little bit more, so that unless you're approaching them from a certain angle, that you don't see them. Like when they were at the
Really?
220, when you're at the 225 Parker Road Exchange.
Yeah.
If you notice, you don't see them until you're up and over the top or you're coming the other direction.
Oh, that's true.
So when you're coming towards them, they hide. Same thing when they run along the railings near Cherry Creek State Park. They're going to find the gullies in which, until you get right on top of them, you don't see them.
Yeah.
So there's part of that being hidden. And there are a couple of the big hill that is next to I-225 as the Cherry Creek Reservoir, the hill that's holding back all the water. If you look there are some trees that populate that hill. And if you go and you travel on top of it on the Cherry Creek Dam Road and look down, many times you'll see tents there behind those trees, but you can't see them from 225. So there's part of that is, it's
well,
just
I had not given that any thought, but the best way to not be seen is not to be there.
Exactly.
So just please move on.
Yeah.
Just and I know they're not listening to the show.
No.
By the way, it's not for a lack of cell phones. They have I've seen them with cell phones all the time. I mean, I don't know if it's the Obama phone or whatever, but they have no problem securing, I think, paid cell service.
Yeah.
Which is
or
weird.
at least just buying the burner phones. That's the thing, is you can go into the convenience stores and buy burner phones type of a thing. So I'm certain that's what they're doing. But again, it's weird that they're able to get that. Yeah.
Seem to have no problems with that. We're going to, every time we bring Chief Acevedo on, we should at least have him drive by that particular thing. We should be like, dude, it never goes away.
No.
This is a pimple that you pop every night, and when you wake up, it's come back. I mean, there's just no way it's ever going to stay away until you do something about it. You know how with on roofs, if you don't want the birds to hop up in there and do their thing and, poop bomb the deck or something like that, you put those little things up there to discourage
spikes.
them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not suggesting spikes. I'm saying, isn't there something that you can put on there that would make a difference? Like,
oddly enough, I have cat spikes at home to keep the cats off the reptile cages. Yeah. To keep the cats off the top of the reptile cages. I'll show you a picture.
Spike seems inhumane.
Yeah, it does seem inhumane. And again, if you're going to put them in certain areas, then we can't go there either. Like people have talked about, we put spikes or make the park benches and stuff uncomfortable. Well, I can't sit down then.
What about in the middle of the night? Like it instantly lights turn on that have the intensity of the sun and they strobe. And then on top of it, you play John Tesh music, super loud, like underneath the overpass. I got to believe if that doesn't scare all living creatures away, let alone
that
people.
Is true. That is true.
And it's not as inhumane, slightly less inhumane than the spikes. If you were to do something like that, and then John Tesh comes on and then people are just scrambling. Like,
they are.
I'd rather rather just sleep on a street, Maybe that's not safe either. Listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut away for a break. We're going to come back and give Billy, I would have said ample time, but we're going to give him adequate time to do the good stuff, which is the You Choose the News. Stick around. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. That's a little big head Todd and the Monsters from way back in the day. God, that could be 30 years old, Billy. That's craziness. Let's turn it over to the big man for the good stuff. That is You Choose the News.
Good morning, sir. Yes, it is that time of the morning where we play everybody's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. Yes, we have scoured the interwebs for mere moments this morning to find stupid stories, giving them really ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game. Why? Well, because the people in charge aren't awake yet. They have no clue we're doing this, so please, we'd appreciate it if you keep it a secret. Alrighty, sir. Here are your choices this morning.
Excited.
Headline number 1, make your bathroom delicious. Headline number 2, choices, victim or accessory. Headline number 3, surfing snake. Headline number 4, just a distraction. Okay, your choices this morning are make your bathroom delicious, choices, victim or accessory, surfing snake, and just a distraction. Your
God,
choice,
these
sir.
are all pretty good, but
They're kind of
I'll
weird.
be honest,
Yeah.
it's maybe a chicken and an egg thing, but make your bathroom delicious?
Yes, make your bathroom delicious. Now, sometimes doing the cleaning and stuff around your bathroom is not good. And you know, occasionally you visit one of those restaurants and there are unwelcome odors that linger afterwards, no matter how diligent you are at cleaning. This is where our friend, the humble garlic clove, comes into play. Now, this concept is surprisingly simple, according to the people that seem to clean things a lot more than I do. What they say is all you need to do is take a single clove of garlic and drop it into your toilet bowl at night before you go to bed. As you sleep, it develops into a delicious broth that you're able to drink. No, I'm kidding.
No toilet vampires.
Yeah.
That's
No.
God,
As you
Billy.
sleep, the garlic releases its natural aroma, which comes from something called allicin. It's known as an antibacterial and
always been like
antifungal properties. The compound works to neutralize odors and leaves your bathroom smelling much fresher by the morning and eliminates any of those unpleasant stains or marks inside of the bathroom as well, in case you've had the Taco Bell. So basically,
wait,
yeah.
What?
Yeah, so basically the idea, it is a deodorizer and eco-friendly alternative to chemical-based air fresheners and promotes cleaning. It actually it'll take away some of the yellow stains and things like that that build up inside of the toilet if you don't clean it often as well. So just by dropping a clove of garlic into the toilet at night.
But listen, I'm okay with little judiciously used amounts of garlic, but does it make your bathroom smell like garlic?
No, they say that it actually it releases the aroma, kind of tamps down and replaces all the other. Well, you know, because the stinky stuff that comes out of your rear
But it
hole.
releases the aroma of garlic?
It says that it kind of changes the aroma a little bit. So it probably does not smell like garlic, but I think you should try.
I may,
Tell me what happens.
I may do this garlic on a rope too in the shower.
Yeah. So
maybe good enough for the toilet, good enough for me.
It is. So it's a eco-friendly, safe way to help out your plumbing, both the ones internally in your body and also
if
there
you
in
want your
house.
bathroom to smell like your favorite Italian restaurant.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm hungry for pizza.
Next choice this morning. Choices of victim or accessory, surfing snake, or just a distraction.
Surfing snake, of course. Billy,
Surfing
come
snake.
on.
This is wonderful. We are going to Australia for this one, and we are going to meet Igor Figuza. He is
I'm sorry, Gesundheit.
Yes, exactly. He is an influencer that has been arrested by Australian authorities because he took his snake out in public.
Oh,
and
hello.
that's not a euphemism.
Careful
What he did is he actually posted on Instagram and other social media sites that he went surfing with his pet carpet python. Now, that's kind of an issue. One, in part, there are some rules inside of Australia as far as animals you can keep, and he has run afoul with the authorities before as far as, you know, taking his python out in places he shouldn't. It's
just a little gardener.
Yeah, exactly. The problem with this is it's a carpet python, and he took it surfing. That's not cool because snakes lack the ability to cough. And the problem being now,
cough?
Yes, cough.
Okay.
Now there are some snakes that do. All snakes can swim, but there are some snakes that are good at swimming, and they have some built-in mechanisms to keep them from aspirating water. And the carpet python is not one of them. So taking him, I don't know, in rough surf, where you may go in the water and you may have water splashing around its face, increases the likelihood the thing is going to aspirate water into its lung, and it will get horribly, horribly sick and die a nasty death. This is not a person that cares for his pets. He does not understand them, nor does he care for them.
If you don't take care of your snake, you never know what
Maybe you need to rub it with
things
garlic.
can do.
Yeah, take away the horrible smells and stains. Alrighty. Final choice this morning. choices: victim or accessory, or just a distraction.
Victim or accessory?
That was the
Is it a
choice.
choice?
Yes, it is a choice. It was a choice that a 19-year-old from Warner Robins, Georgia, offered a few teenagers. He said, you got a choice. Either you come help me do some crimes, or they're going to refer to you as the victim. Evidently, the 19-year-old had come up to a bunch of minors and said, I need your help in doing some stealing stuff and taking things that don't belong to us. And the kid said, no, we're not going to participate in that. Get away. So he showed back up at their house and pulled out his weapon and started to shoot people.
Oh, yeah, you're not supposed to do
Yeah,
that.
no. But that'll teach him. He recently was sentenced to 40 years in prison for 16
Which state?
served Georgia. But he was sentenced to 40 years. Problem is, only 16 of those will be in prison. The remaining 24 are going to be on probation because, he was just trying to persuade those kids to make a different life choice. That's all it was. That's all they wanted. That's basically what it is. And that's it. That is the end of today's You Choose the News. As always, George is our perennial winner, and I'm just a giant loser. But today, yes, we have a home study kit from Dr. Doofenshmirtz. It's called Libraries Are Stupid. Yes, don't let your kids choose how they learn. Transform our school libraries into disciplined facilities, just like they do in Texas. Today's students don't hate the educational system enough. This is a way to make them hate it even more. Learn why libraries in your kid's school are really not needed anymore. Because, reading is stupid. Back to you.
Buddy, you even got in the advertiser.
I know we get paid today.
And we still have time
This is
left.
great.
This is great. We
This
need
is
Mark Levin on
money.
every morning to keep us under control. That's
Exactly.
wonderful. Listen, stick around. It's going to come off the rails here, I imagine, right after the top of the hour. We're going to get to you, me, some of the news of the day. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 Mighty KNUS. Welcome to the second hour of 4 of the George Show on 710 KNUS. You know, at 10 o'clock, we get replaced by Charlie Kirk. By the way, this has been a host-filled month for me, man. Wasn't it this month that we did Dennis Prager, the cigar night? And then I was at a football viewing / wake with the Buffs Oregon game with Charlie Kirk. And then I just had Mark Levin on for his book, The Democrat Party Hates America, at the top of the hour. Who's left, man? Who am I leaving out that I haven't yet covered in the month of September? Who are our other big-time hosts? Seb Gorka, we haven't ever had on. Trying to think of who else. I would count Stephen Tubbs amongst them, but he's already said he doesn't want to be one of us anymore. So it hurts. It really hurts. And again, the natural feeling that I have whenever somebody leaves an organization I am at is like I imagine watching one of your buddies in the cell get paroled. Do you know what I mean? Like you're clinging to the bars, watching them walk off in the suit they haven't worn in 10 years, climbing into a taxi cab, driving off to likely homelessness. And that brings us to this topic right here. As you know, Mike Johnston, he's the mayor of Denver. We've had him on the show. He talked a lot about his priority and about trying to end the homelessness thing in Denver. Now, and by the way, I know there's this other phrase, unhoused, like somebody did this to them or something versus homeless. I don't know that it matters. Neither term is meant to be pejorative. It's meant to just merely be descriptive. And I don't think either one is disrespectful. These are people without homes. That's just what it is. But there's a real push towards this housing first thing that was going on. Now, we had referenced it in the first hour of the show, did not know that we would generate more conversation, but the timing is good because I saw Mayor Johnston go to social media and indicate that they are providing housing now for, I can't remember how many people. They've wiped out an entire encampment by providing these people with hotel rooms and other things. And I want it to work. Billy has said he wants it to work. I just am super skeptical of the housing first approach. And we got a caller who feels maybe similarly, maybe different. It's Stephen from Denver. You're on 710 KNUS. Stephen, what do you think?
Well, I think that was a brilliant segue. You're not only a handsome man, you're actually pretty funny and clever.
Wait a minute. If I didn't know any better, I'd say this was Dad. Dad? Because it's clearly not my brother. What do you think about all this?
I don't have any faith in the homes because these people didn't just drop here from outer space and like, oh, wow, there's nowhere to live and I don't know anybody. They were in homes before they lost the right and privilege to be in a home or an apartment. So you're going to give them these mini houses and these hotels and the wraparound services. Okay, I would have 20% faith in it if I heard what happens, because not everyone's going to be able to take advantage of this wonderful thing that we're giving them. What happens when you bomb out of that? Then you're back out there homeless. What do we do then?
Well, I'm not.
He doesn't say that. They don't ever say that.
What we don't know, Stephen, is what does bomb out look like? If you heard the interview I did with Mayor Johnston a week or two ago, I had said, how long can people stay in these, artificial settings? They're not their long-term homes. And he said the goal is 3 to 6 months. And I'd asked, well, what happens after 6 months? Maybe you have someone that's been unsuccessful in getting a job, or maybe you have someone who's just said, hey, screw you. I like it here. I'm not going to go. Do we then kick them out?
Well, yeah. I mean, no, I didn't hear that interview. I wish I had. But the thing is, there's going to be destruction. There's going to be abuse. There's going to be arguments and problems between human beings. And, so you got your 3 to 6 months. You know what I strongly believe? It will go longer and these places will become decrepit, like the crappy hotels that run up and down Colfax Avenue.
I worry about that too. A texter, by the way, always good to remind us of some of the facts that we didn't get 100% right. They said that the encampment there at 8th and Grant was partially wiped out yesterday. The rest will be done today. Thank you for that. This is, of course, over by the
I drive by there in the morning to work.
Yeah.
Because I'm still working at 71. Otherwise, I would just get in trouble. And I honk and I holler at them at like 5:45 in the morning, going like, "Hey, everybody, it's time for work." Because they're not homeless. They're jobless. They're careerless. If you have a job or a career, you're not all of a sudden magically homeless. These are people who don't want to work. they just want to do what they're doing, and that's how they got to this point. And the Democrat mindset does not allow for, what are we going to do when you drop out, when you bomb out, when you're back out there? And it's just, I mean, I'm the caller that said put $5,000 in a bank account and bet yourself that this doesn't work, and then you just won $5,000. Because in 5 years, this is going to be, if I'm still alive in 5 years, I'll be calling in doing the Mr. I told you so stuff.
You say if you're still alive. I mean, do you know something that we don't? I mean, did you want to share something? Because my guess is you will be alive unless you're like 110 or something.
Well, I'm 72.
That's nothing. 72 is nothing. It used to be really old, but from where I'm sitting, Stephen, not that bad. 72 is right around the corner. It looks pretty good. 72 is the new 55. That's what I've heard. I read that somewhere. I think I just wrote it down. But let me ask you this. In terms of this issue, I want people to be able to live the life they want as long as it has minimal consequences for me and my family and for you and your family. So if somebody wanted to drop off the grid, have at it, right? But that's not what's going on. It's like they want to drop off the grid, but they want the grid to be there to support them. And it's just really hard for people that aren't suffering mental illness or addiction or both, and they usually show up in pairs, to have sympathy for them because they're choosing this lifestyle.
Exactly.
I had someone else texted in too, Stephen. I honked my horn too only earlier. I cannot remember now which boy I had with me, whether it was Jeff or Graham, and we were driving somewhere, and there was a woman walking up and down the street, and she had a sign, and it was a little clever. She waved with her right hand, and she had a little cardboard cutout arm on the left that would wave, and it was all this other stuff. And they said, man, it seems like it's a lot of hard work to just walk up and down here and do the sign thing. And I said, that is not hard work. I mean, I don't know what that is. I said, you get to set your own hours. You don't pay taxes. I'm like, it costs you nothing to try to guilt people into providing you something, even though you could go get a job. I don't think that's hard work. I think that's a gutless approach to existence.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, though, I think doing nothing is the hardest thing in the world. That's why I'm still working. I can't do nothing.
That is an intellectual thing. I don't think. I think physically, if you could listen, if you won $1 billion, would you work as hard as you do right now?
No, I would be out playing and spending it lavishly, golfing and snorkeling.
You know, I wonder if I couldn't spend time doing the reverse Mike Kaufman. You know how Mike went undercover as a homeless guy for, I don't know, it was like a decade or something. It was probably a week, but I think it felt like a decade. What if you could be the guy standing on the street corner and you're handing hardworking people money as they pull up? Your sign is, here, take $5. Do you know what I mean? It's like the reverse of the beggars.
Yeah, I would do that for a day if I hit this $800 million
that's out there right now.
Powerball.
That's out there, right? Are you going to go buy the lotto ticket?
I buy one each time it gets over $500 million, or $500 million. I mean,
you know, the problem is that after taxes, you're really only getting about 150 million. It's like, why do it? Why is it even worth it at that point? If you can only end up with, 150, 175 million bucks, you still got to work full time. No, I'm kidding. I think that would be great.
No. Here's what I want you to stop doing. When you make a funny joke like that, don't go, I'm kidding, because anybody who can't get the joke doesn't deserve to know that you were kidding.
I'm doing that for my family because they don't find me funny. They do not.
Oh, no.
That's really just when they go. There's a time, listen, Stephen, this is real. Early on, when you're first exposed to someone and you have a certain kind of sense of humor that's different or whatever, you are funny all the time. After day in, day out for years, it's just not as funny. It's like, I imagine living with Eddie Murphy or George Carlin at the time or whatever. If you had that every single day, after a while, you're like, yeah, clever. Anyway, can you get the milk? You know what I mean? It would be something like that.
Well, those are kids, though, and they're going to be tough on you no matter what. But I just watched George Carlin deliver a speech to the Library of Congress. And well, it was an old one.
Of course, well, it has to be. Yeah.
Yes. And it was the most, I mean, he didn't have a teleprompter and he didn't have notes, and he was just so awesome. And he was a big leftist in the 60s and early 70s on the Smothers Brothers show, but I believe today we need him. I think he would take wokeness to task.
That's why he couldn't survive. That's why he couldn't be successful, is because the Hollywood folks would dismantle him and cancel him. He's just too much of a truth teller. Right. Let me look at Bill Maher. Bill Maher, I mean, dude's definitely a lefty, right? But the stuff that he says is candid, and it is at least consistent. Like, he holds each side accountable. And that's why you can start to see some people going after him, whether it's Howard Stern or others, with this idea that there's something wrong with Bill. I'm telling you, that guy's a bit of a unicorn out there. And once he's gone, I don't know who can replace him.
Yeah. Well, maybe you.
Oh my God. No, I wish I'd take the paycheck though. Stephen, thank you so much for the phone call. 303-696-1971. We're going to stay with the calls. Dwayne, you're on 710 KNUS. Dwayne, what do you think?
Oh, good morning, sir. I have to agree. 3 to 6 months, please. If you had a kid in college in the dorm, you'd give them more than 6 months to get acclimated to everything. And that's without any health issues or chemical issues or alcohol issues. You know what I'm saying?
Do you kick them out after 6 months, 7 months, 10 months, a year? What's a reasonable amount of time to say time to leave the nest?
Well, how long before they suck out all the plumbing, the wiring, and everything else and sell it for drugs?
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I want this to work. And Dwayne, I'm hopeful you're rooting for this to work, but I just don't think it will. Housing First hasn't worked anywhere I can think of where it's been tried. Maybe this will be an anomaly. Maybe this will work because they're providing these other services and expectations, but I'm worried, man. This could be an epic disaster.
I think it's going to be a financial sucking sound that'll actually collapse parts of Colorado. South Park, the fun show, they have Cartman singing California Dreaming as they load up buses to take them back to California, going that California takes better care of the homeless. I think we should invest the millions of dollars into that and getting them out of Colorado.
That's interesting too, because we're busing the asylum seekers and the migrants from Texas and Florida and whatnot up to Martha's Vineyard in New York City. I wonder if we couldn't do the same for the homeless and offer them the opportunity to relocate in sunny California.
If we had a governor and or a couple of mayors who had a spine and would just sit there and say, where do you want to go? I mean, Mayor, I can't even think of his name, our former DA and state attorney general that was the mayor in Colorado Springs.
John Southers.
His idea of yes, Mr. Southers, thank you. He would sit there and walk in. Oh, hi, you're homeless. Where you want to go? And they put him on a bus, throw a few bucks on them, and get them out. And there was no homeless problem during the 80s and 90s in Colorado Springs.
I wonder if that couldn't work. And it's by consent, right? And what could California say about it? It's going to help them retain those congressional seats that we heard Mark Levin say they're going to lose 4 of in the next census. Dwayne, we may have just figured out something here. And the best time to do it is right about now through November, right? As the temperatures start to dip, it might be a good idea to say, yep, you can do the micro home here. You can do under the viaduct here for a little bit. But how about the beaches of sunny San Diego?
Well, yes. Arizona looks good, although I do like Arizona far more than California. They're already talking about zero emissions areas in California where you can't have a internal combustion vehicle. Yeah, can't have everything that runs on fossil fuels. But my thing is, I look at it this way. Instead of spending, what did he say, $127 million?
No, I think it was through the rest of this year. It's like 50 something million-ish. And then next year, it's another like $250 million, something like that.
All right. So we take 1,000 people, give them, $150,000, ship them, put them anywhere they want to go.
Anywhere they want to go sounds even more consent-based, Dwayne. I like that. Pick a place on the map that isn't in Colorado. We'll send you there.
Exactly. They've got a grub stake. They can get themselves set up. They'll get them set up with whatever NGO that's out there for them, get them connected. And then it's like, okay, fine. But if you were returned back to Colorado, we'll treat you like a diseased animal and send you on your way somewhere else.
Well, diseased animal is going to make people on the left say, hey, we don't want to do that. We have to treat them like they're special guests who are just here for a short period of time. Like you invite people into your home for various things. Maybe it's a Broncos game or a neighborhood watch party or some sort of a holiday event. You don't expect them to live there forever, right? You treat them very well, and then you send them on their way. And if they've had too much to drink, by God, you will get them an Uber. But maybe that's the approach we take. Diseased animals just going to be too hard from an optic standpoint.
Okay, so I was a little bit inconsiderate in what I said.
Well, you know that
right.
matters on the left, friend. Dwayne, thank you so much for the phone call, my man. Hey, Dwayne's line is open, 303-696-1971. We're going to cut away for a break here. Listen, the homeless topic is a real one. It's not going away. I'm happy to continue to have that conversation. There is something, though, else that was in the news. I had just scratched the very surface of it with Mark Levin back when he was on in the 6 o'clock hour. If you didn't get a chance to see that or listen to that, you got to go to the podcast. You can probably also, that would have been a good one for the Zoom too, Billy. At some point, listen, here's what we're doing is we think we have the ability to Zoom folks in here and maybe get video on them and me at the same time. Yeah, I know. Same reaction. Is that smart? I don't know. But it's also going to increase the hygiene factor for the guests, which right now, as far as I know, 2 hours into the future, Mark Levin is either in a suit in an office somewhere working, or he's in a robe. You know what I mean? With ashes on the chest of it, maybe a cup of coffee that he microwaved from a couple days ago. I don't know. But that's how I picture him. It would have been good to have him on the Zoom, but you can go back and listen on the YouTubes and the Rumbles for that interview as well. But I just scratched the surface with him, and that is something that the president went on social media, Truth Social, to say that I think is a legit talk topic, especially given the industry that Billy and I are in right now, which is the talk on the radio waves kind of a business that's here, one that's regulated by the FCC. And this is what he's intimating at. We'll talk about that when we come back. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Just a heads up, we're going to have our good buddies from Alpine Planning today, normally yesterday, but we're going to have them today, and it's going to be Stump Amy, I think is the site. I'm kidding. We're not going to try to stump Amy. She does such a nice job as it is. But I do have a couple questions. One about the yield on the 10-year note and what that portends for federal deficits. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't told her I'm going to ask that. That would be unfair. If you're listening, though, Amy, you can look like a superstar if you've already researched that. Listen, here's what I want to talk about. President Donald Trump went to Truth Social. That's his social media thing that was like Twitter back when Twitter was coming off the rails before Elon Musk got it and took it all the way off the rails. And came out on Sunday. And I want to read to you the actual, what do you call it? A truther, social or something, but whatever his tweet is, here it is. He is talking about the mainstream media, the legacy media folks, and he says they are almost all dishonest and corrupt, but Comcast, with its one-side and vicious, and I think he probably meant one-sided, but one-side and vicious coverage by NBC News, and in particular, MSNBC, often and correctly referred to as MSDNC, Democrat National Committee, ! Should be investigated for its, quote, country-threatening treason, period, end quote. Their endless coverage of the now fully debunked scam, all caps, known as Russia, 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 and much else, is one big campaign contribution to the radical left Democratic Party. I say up front, openly and proudly, that when I win, all caps, the presidency of the United States, they and others of the lamestream media will be thoroughly scrutinized for their knowingly dishonest and corrupt coverage of people, things, and events. Why should NBC or any other of the corrupt and dishonest media companies be entitled to use the very valuable airwaves of the USA free? They are the true threat to democracy and are, in fact, all quotes, all caps here, the enemy of the people. The fake news media should pay a big price for what they've done to our once great country. That has 6.86 thousand retruths and 21.4 thousand truth likes, or whatever the equivalent of that is. Now, listen, I read that and I'm instantly gravely concerned. I imagine many of you out there, and I do too, think that the mainstream media, the legacy media, are largely left-leaning. I don't think there's any disputing that, whether it's by party affiliation of the newsrooms, which you know from all the different studies that are out there, incredibly left-leaning, the story selection, the way they spend, all true, all true. But now you have a guy that was the president of the United States, 45, and would like to be 47. And now says, and this is the sentence that bothers me, not the rest of it. The rest of it, say whatever you want, man. You can even agree with it. But when I win the presidency, they and the others of the lamestream media will be thoroughly scrutinized for their knowingly dishonest and corrupt coverage of people, things, and events. Why should they be entitled to use the very valuable airwaves of the USA free? What is that suggesting there? I mean, what concerns me is that it sounds like he wants to inject government into a greater role with the presentation of news, or we'll just call it the First Amendment. He wants to inject government into expression of thoughts and ideas by the media through, I think, juicing up the FCC, because it's the Federal Communications Commission that governs those limited airwaves. And that includes TV and what we do right here on AM radio. The FCC has certain rules. But if you'll recall, I think it was under Reagan, we blew up the fairness doctrine, which was the idea that if you were going to put on some specific political type leaning coverage, you would have to provide equal opportunity to provide the other side. That thing blows up and goes away. I think it's under Reagan. And then guess who rises to the top of that talk radio pyramid? Dude named Rush Limbaugh. I don't know if Rush Limbaugh could have been Rush Limbaugh as we knew him in an environment where you had to provide equal time to gobble up. Because I don't know how many radio stations would say, I want to put the other side on. This sounds to me, and I had sort of scratched the surface of this with Mark Levin, who has that book #1 already in Amazon before it came out, probably just off of pre-sales. The Democrat Party Hates America. We talked about authoritarianism. What do you hear here? I mean, is this the future? You have a guy that could very well be the next president of the United States saying, I'm going to use government to either penalize or charge fees to these legacy media folks, my guess is to use the public airwaves through the FCC because of the way they put information out. Because what he deems to be dishonest and corrupt coverage of people, things, and events. Is that right? Do you want to see that? And when I ask these questions of you, if your thought is, yes, screw MSNBC, screw NBC, they're so far left. They've been so unfair. They have interfered with elections in their reportings. Bad, bad, bad. Okay, but remember, we're not just opening up the Democrat side of the FCC. Let's go get the Dems. Let's go get the lefties. You put those weapons in the hands of the FCC, and now they're empowered to do it for everyone, depending on who's in the White House. Is that where we want to go with this? This is a Pandora's box. One, I'm not sure it survives First Amendment scrutiny. In fact, I don't think so at all. But you agree with this? I mean, this thing right here speaks to the concerns of so many. This is red meat to the MAGA base, no doubt about it. But from a deeper dive, and you folks aren't just the MAGA base. You are the intellectual wing of the MAGA base. You folks listen because you want to be confronted with thought. And many times you participate in the conversation, whether it's through text, and my favorite, of course, are the calls at 303-696-1971. Tell me why this is okay. Because I don't think it's okay. I don't care if MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS are in the bag for the Dems. And when I say I don't care, I mean from the standpoint of justifying the use of governmental authority to come in and scrutinize them. To what end? We're going to charge people with crime? He said MSNBC should be investigated for treason. For treason. Then there's hanging offenses. Treason. You think that? Is that where we go now? What country does that sound like? When you have the head of government coming in and saying, oh, this media outlet has printed things that I think are untrue or false, and therefore we're going to hold them accountable to the law. Really? Does that feel like America? It doesn't feel like the America I grew up in. 303-696-1971. We're getting some text too. Tony from Littleton, you're on 710. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Hey, good morning, George.
Good morning.
So I wanted to call and talk about Levin and really about the subject you're on now.
Yeah,
but because Billy had talked in his news report about the shooting of Dave Snook.
Yeah,
I know Snook pretty well and his partner, and he hadn't mentioned Jeff as his partner. So what happened on that night briefly? I mean, he went in that doorway. And the guy was standing a half a flight, about 6 steps up from him. And as soon as he went through, the guy swiped him with a semi-automatic and hit him 12 times.
Dang.
From the shoulder to the ankle.
Dang.
Couple in his ribs, and broke his ribs, and then injured knees and everything else all on the way down. He got that second charge, and maybe the indifference charge and the second attempted murder, because he reloaded. He reloaded with another clip. And Jeff managed, to fire, came through the door right behind him. His partner fired a couple shots up at him, and that guy took off. And Jeff then basically picked Dave up, threw him in his own car, and drove him to Swedish and saved him.
What a hero!
And it was, and Biden awarded him a Medal of Freedom or whatever that is, just a few months ago. Jeff, his partner, for his actions that night. So
that's tremendous.
It was kind of a big deal. Yeah. So on the Levin thing. I heard.
Thanks Levin for that clarification, by the way. I didn't know those facts. I would if I were still the man. I'm not the man, so I don't know.
No, yeah, no, I mean, it was an amazing thing. I mean, it was lucky. Dave's very lucky to even be alive. So, and Jeff, was a hero in hauling him out of there. So,
Awesome.
anyway, on the Levin thing, him making the comment that, well, nobody's picked this up in the liberal media, and I've got to say to you, for that quote unquote liberal media, he's might as well be Alex Jones of InfoWars. I listen to Levin about 20 minutes a night, and he'll get on his rant, go down maybe 12 points, and 10 of them just aren't. They have no basis in reality. And his last claim to you, the whole idea of Democrats hate America, they're fascist and authoritarian. Isn't that like projecting what the MAGA base has become? And he's kind of the intellectual leader of the MAGA base, right? I mean, you could credit him with that, and that's simply projecting it. It's not Democrats that rushed the Capitol to overturn an election. So I think that's projecting to say Democrats hate America when it's really Republicans who demonstrate they want a different America than what we have today. And so I just want to put that on the table. And I do agree with you on your point. It's absurd. This is what Trump is. This was what scares everybody about Trump. His fascist leanings, he wears on his sleeve. And he's talking about abolishing the Justice Department and eliminating 500,000 jobs in the federal government so he can consolidate power around the presidency. That's all scary stuff. And him threatening the mainstream media is no surprise. So I concur with you, or at least I don't know if that's your opinion. I take the position this is very dangerous times we live in.
Well, I'll say this. I do think the Democrat Party has authoritarian tendencies from the standpoint that when you talk about things like the cancel culture and their approach to education, I do feel like it's a top-down approach to governance that I think is completely opposite of what was intended by the framers. But this approach is no different. I don't absolve the Democrats of anything. But when I hear a guy come out and say, when I'm elected president, these media companies are going to be held accountable for what he is claiming are their lies, their misinformation, all this other stuff, says there's treason involved at MSNBC. These are scary, strong words that used to mean something more. You've even got Gosar now and the president talking about Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, being treasonous and deserving of being hung. Like in an older time, I'm like, this is crazy talk. And what are we saying about each other?
And Trump is saying he's going to go after everybody that went after him. He's coming after every one of those people. And you may know this, his attorneys, the prosecutors have asked to keep people's names private because Trump literally will sick his guys on anybody that they can get their names. He's asked for every attorney, every clerk that works in the office, in the prosecutor's office, and he wants their names and addresses. And you probably know he put out on his own website Obama's address in Washington, and not 5 days later, the Secret Service picks up a guy with a semi-automatic and a machete outside Obama's home. This is scary stuff that the path he's going down, but he's doing it all the time. And I don't think he's kidding. And I think it's got people alarmed when he says he's going after everybody who went after him. What does that mean?
Well, the let me be your vengeance stuff is scary. But let me ask you, man, do you feel like, Tony, from your vantage point, that the big mainstream media folks, the big, the ABC, CBS's, NBC, CNN's, the others, MSNBC, that they have a political bias?
I would say they have yes, I would acknowledge they have a political bias, but we can live with a political bias.
Well, that's the answer. And I get what you're saying. The answer is that just comes with America.
They look, 65% of the Americans feel certain ways about issues. Just take abortion. They feel a certain way. So yes, that mainstream media with its multiple outlets, multiple channels, multiple newspaper outlets, all of these people are reflecting the majority of the country. That's true. And it's biased. That's a bias. Even though they represent the majority, they're appealing to the majority of the country. Yes, it's a bias. I'll acknowledge that. But then Fox is a bias representing a minority of the population. But it's become very dangerous and very hostile and very angry.
Which has become hostile and dangerous
on the right at this stage. I mean,
but Tony, you don't see that on the left as well. Like, you don't hear some of these commentators on the other stations that we mentioned coming out and saying bonker stuff too, where you're like, damn, that's just too extreme.
You do. I'm sure there are some kind of extremist people, but the bulk of the people from I don't care if it's MSNBC with their true left leanings, they're not out there saying, let's go attack so and so. That doesn't happen. They don't say that, and they also, I'll defend them in this case. They never just flat out come out and tell lies. Fox literally, as you well know, sat in a room and said, we need to keep lying to these people or they're going to go over to another station that will lie to them. That doesn't happen at MSNBC. And I'm going to give you just
MSNBC, buddy, I'll give you an example. Left.
They are left. It's biased, but I'll give you an example, and I'll be brief. You've given me a lot of time. So Rachel Maddow, she does her opening block. Her opening block is typically 18 minutes long. It's she no commercials, and she gets into the history of whatever the topic is for the night. I saw her come on one night, and she went like a 23-minute opening block, and it was a mea culpa for a factual error she made in a report. I can't even remember what it was about anymore. The night before. And she went through exactly how she made the mistake and how they then got through their screening processes.
Yeah.
And she apologized profusely. Now and she took 23 minutes to go through and say, I screwed up. I will never do that again to the best of my ability. Now, that's not something I hear on the right. And yes, she's left-leaning, absolutely. But she got a factual point wrong, and she took time to come in and say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong.
I appreciate that. It doesn't change the bias. I do appreciate that. And Tony, I think you've got us kind of kicked off here on a good topic. And I guess the question I would ask, and I don't have time to explore it more with you, is, and I think I know your answer, is what do we do about it? You have these news, like I've got a text here from our friend Eric who says Trump clearly means when the media lies. That's the question. Who gets to decide when the media is lying, and who gets to decide what to do about it? That's the scary part. There's an easy answer. Well, the government. I'm not ready to hand over those reins to any side, not the Republicans, not the Democrats, not anybody. And no conservative who is truly a conservative would ever advocate for the government playing a larger role in the expression of any ideas ever.
You hit on a point very important, and you were accurate when you said Reagan, during the Reagan administration, he eliminated the fairness doctrine. That was probably a mistake. You also, last point, and I know you want to probe this with other people and do so, but we have to look at how did this conservative media, and I use this conservative media because it's different. The messaging from the conservative media from rush out has been different than any other time. Well, that's not true. Different than any time going back to about 1940. We haven't had this kind of media telling this kind of story, saying, every man for himself.
And Tony, I get that. I would just say, if we thank you for the call. If we just focus on Fox like they're the problem, I don't believe that. We have our biased media, just like they have their biased media. The question is, and we're gonna be joined by the Smarty Smarts at Alpine Planning here in just a moment. We get to have our day with Amy, which is great. But the question I want to explore with you is, and I see these on the text, call in too, 303-696-1971. If they're lies, what do we do about them? What's the answer? Is the answer what Donald Trump suggests? And that is suggesting that this is treasonous behavior and that they'll be held accountable by the government? Is that the model for what you perceive to be media bias? 303-696-1971. We're going to cut away for a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Amy, it's going to be Stump Amy Tuesday. No, I'm kidding, Amy. Don't hang up. But I did have a question, and that is about, is there any concerns that you have about the 10-year note yield, historically speaking, and debt? No, if you're not prepared for that, that's cool. It's my fault for not having texted you earlier in the day. Nonetheless, Amy Duncan, Alpine Planning. When we come back, George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Back by popular demand. No, not me. You missed her yesterday, but we've got her live right now. It's Amy from Alpine Planning. Amy, how are you?
I'm good, George. I appreciate you adjusting. Sorry.
No. People
there's
texted
like
in.
a
I swear to
school
you. I swear to you.
yeah.
People texted in and said, "This is throwing off my whole week. Where was Amy yesterday?" So I'm just telling you, they listen.
Well, anyway, I'll jump right in. But these school bus shortages make for difficult radio timing. But anyway, taking a look at the numbers, September has just been not a favorable month here, George, for markets. Right now, we're looking at the Dow off 170 again. The S&P's off 35, NASDAQ off 130. So all three indices in the red. Coming off 3 straight weekly losses for the S&P 500. And again, just the huge drag is that stronger than expected growth continues to force the Fed to raise rates. The current status is that, at this point, people are expecting the Fed to cut rates next year, but less than people expect, and then rate reductions over the next 3 years. So I will say this, the lesson usually is that rates go up the stairs but come down the elevator. So we shall continue to see how that plays out. We head into October, which oftentimes is perceived by investors as kind of a jinx type of a month, of course, because of the crashes of 1929 and 1987. But I will remind people that amidst these losses the last 3 weeks, October often presents a fantastic buying opportunity. So make sure your plan is in place, be in touch with your advisor. And October, of course, also is a prelude to November and December, which historically are very strong seasonal months for the stock market. So if anyone has some questions, we're here to try to help. And I hope that I stayed within your time frame.
You did. You stuck the landing. Alpine.
And if you want me to address...
No. Next time. Alpine Planning Group is a comprehensive financial planning firm committed to improving your long-term financial success. Investing is a matter of trust. They're prepared to earn yours. Call them today, 303-843-0918. Thanks, Amy.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Woodbury Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC and registered investment advisor. Alpine Planning Group and Woodbury Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated entities. 14 West Dry Creek Circle, Littleton, Colorado, 80120.
George Brauchler back with you here halfway through the Tuesday show right here on my dad's birthday on September the 26th. Happy birthday, Pops. We've got callers on the line. Brian, Bob, one line open at 303-696-1971. Text coming in. Here's the topic of the day. The former, potentially future president of the United States, Donald Trump, went to Truth Social, his social media platform, which is a bit ironic, by the way, it seems to me. Like this guy's answer to I don't like what's going on with Twitter and the information they put out and the way that they decide who gets what is to put his own thing out there. And now he has, I'm just going to read it to you again, and then we're going to have a conversation about it. There is a poll, by the way, that was done, Real Clear Politics. It's an opinion research poll that was done. Also kind of telling as to what's going on out there, and we're going to have a conversation about it. And I'm just going to tell you the question right up front. Who is responsible for determining whether or not something the media puts out is a lie, and what should the consequences be for that? This is President Trump's response. He's talking about the lamestream media, as he calls it. They are almost all dishonest and corrupt, but Comcast, with its one side and vicious coverage by NBC News, and in particular MSNBC, often incorrectly referred to as MSDNC, Democrat National Committee, ! Should be investigated for its, quote, country-threatening treason. Who should be investigating that, by the way? Their endless coverage of the now fully debunked scam, all caps, known as Russia, 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 and much else is one big campaign contribution to the radical left Democrat Party. I say upfront, openly, and proudly, he proudly says this, when I win, all caps, the presidency of the United States, they and others of their lamestream media will be thoroughly scrutinized for their knowingly dishonest and corrupt coverage of people, things, and events. Why should NBC or any other of the corrupt and dishonest media companies be entitled to use the very valuable airwaves of the USA free? They are the true threat to democracy and are, in fact, all caps here, the enemy of the people. The fake news media should pay a big price for what they have done to our once great country, ! Folks, this is scary on a lot of levels for me. Now, just separate, if you will, from your passion for Donald Trump. Just take that away for a moment and ask yourselves, doesn't it sound like a dictator to come in and say, you have said things that I deem to be dishonest. They are now treasonous, which, by the way, in America is still an executable offense. They are treasonous. And if I'm elected, when I'm elected, I will scrutinize you and hold you accountable for the lies that you've told. Does that sound anything like the United States of America? When those guys in wigs out there started crafting the First Amendment, which got ratified in 1791 as an addendum there to the Constitution, do you think ever for a moment they would have entertained the idea that government could come in and decide whether or not media's presentation of information was a lie and that they could be held accountable for treason? I don't know. This just doesn't sound right to me. And this is not a defense of the left-wing media that's out there. I'm no defender of theirs. But so the people that have texted in here, whether it's Eric or someone else, and they're talking about open your eyes, you're naive, they're lying. Okay, who says it's a lie? Who gets to determine whether it's an official lie? And then what should be done about it? Didn't we just go to the mats over the garbage approach that the lamestream media and the government took with COVID? Do you remember that? Everything that was put out that dared to question the vaccine or the inoculation or the jab or whatever you want to call it, everything that was put out there, these media groups said, oh, we've branded that a lie, and we're going to either put a tag on it or we're going to block it. Didn't we see that? Didn't we go crazy over that? This is a different version of that exact same approach, isn't it? 303-696-1971. Brian from Arvada, you're on 710. Brian, what are your thoughts, man?
Hey, George, I agree with probably 90% of what Trump said. And I'm sure more than half the country agrees with exactly what he said. The lamestream media are a bunch of liars. We all know it. They lied about COVID. They lied about the medications we could take to help us. Now now they're prescribing those medications, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, all the things they You can't take those. Now they're prescribing them. So those are flat out lies. The Russia collusion, lies. Steele dossier, everybody knew that was a phony document. Oh, no one was investigated for that. Hillary Clinton used a Steele dossier. The media ran with unverified information. Oh, those aren't lies? When you can't verify something, but you're going to run with it as truth, that seems like to be a lie. So he said they lied. Okay. Now, your argument, and you're upset about him going after them. Well,
not him as Donald
maybe
Trump. Donald Trump can go after them all day long. President of the United States cannot and should not. That's my position. First Amendment says people get to say things.
He can curtail some investigations, because I guarantee if
Well,
we had investigations.
What does that mean? Investigations into what?
If we had the emails and all the phone calls between CNN and MSNBC during the whole Russia thing, the country's head would blow up with all the collusion that they had, and all the stuff they went on the air with that was BS lies.
But Brian, that's what we should do,
George,
is arm the government to investigate news outlets. Is that what you want to see for America?
I think that's what you should be irate about, not about Trump tweeted this. Trump X this.
Hold on,
Trump's
so
Truth Social
I can't be equally upset with a media that is definitely left-leaning and is willing to pick stories and tell stories with a specious amount of investigation to tell the story they want. I can't be upset about that and also resist the totalitarian influences and suggestions of a guy who says, I want to arm government to decide what the truth is and to hold people and organizations accountable for telling lies. Man, is that the America you want to be in?
No. And if he would have said that, George, then I would have been thinking like you. He never said totalitarianism.
He didn't say the words. He just described. Buddy, listen to what he said. He calls them treasonous.
I listened to it all. It is
treason. Hang on. And he is going. He proudly says when he wins, they will be thoroughly scrutinized for their knowingly dishonest and corrupt coverage, and then suggests that they're going to put at risk the airwaves. So who's going to determine whether it's a lie, Brian? Who gets to make that decision as to whether what they're putting out is a lie?
The public.
Okay, but that's not what's going to happen. He's talking about the government when he's president.
No, he's talking about them being scrutinized.
By
Amen.
who?
They should be scrutinized.
By who?
The FCC, the Federal Communications.
So we want to arm the FCC with the ability to determine what their motivation is for reporting and whether or not something is the truth?
How they're getting to their how they're to what they're putting on the airwaves. I think people should know that. I don't think that should be done in the dark secrets of night, where they have back and forth collusion. They lie about everything, and then we're supposed to just sit back and be like, well, we can choose to believe them or not. They should be held accountable, George,
by
just
the
like
government.
Everyone else
you
is.
want the government to weigh in on the media.
I want organizations, and I want
what organizations?
Repeating, George. It's not like, it's what I'm saying. Everyone's upset. Trump says things to gaslight people, just like he's getting the reaction he wants out of you.
Doesn't it concern you, Brian, that his approach to this, it incenses me because it pisses all over the First Amendment. I mean, he just wantonly dropped trow and urinated all over the First Amendment. And we've got folks out there defending it. Like, someone needs to do it.
He did it with words. The Democrats are doing it every day with actions. So you know what? I don't get mad over words like you. I get mad over actions.
These aren't words.
You know what
these
Trump's
are promises.
Actions have been?
These
Trump's
are promises.
Actions have been positive. Democrats' actions have been negative.
So here's
I get mad
the
over
universe
actions,
you're in,
George.
Brian. The universe where it's like, yes, everything you said about him in the First Amendment is true, but that doesn't bother me as much as what the Dems done. So I'm not going to address it. It's okay with me if he said, this is a promise, man.
Yeah,
I say up front,
okay
openly and proudly, that when I win, this is a promise to you, the voter. Do you want to arm someone that would make such a promise with the power to do it? Do you want the government to weigh in on the First Amendment and media? I don't. I don't trust the government.
No, I want the government to hold people accountable like it should. I want the government to hold people accountable.
When did the
That's what I
government get
wanted to
empowered
do.
to hold people accountable? What America is
It's called
that?
the DOJ. It's
The-
called the FBI.
So now it's a crime then. You want what the media says to be looked at as a crime.
Knowingly and falsely projecting a lie. You don't think that's a crime? Because that's what they're charging
100%
Trump
I don't
for
think it's
a
a
million
crime.
times over.
100%.
Well, he's being
I
indicted
don't think
for
we're going to
alleged
criminalize.
lies.
We're going to criminalize lies now.
We're doing it with Trump.
We don't do it with Trump. We don't do it with Trump. Tell me which crime he's been accused of committing that's lies.
That he colluded to.
That's not a crime.
To collude with electors.
He's not being prosecuted for any crime. Buddy, what's the crime?
That's what I'm saying.
You're saying
where's the crimes he's being indicted for?
Brian,
give me the crime.
He hasn't been indicted for lying. That's not what he's been indicted for.
Has he been indicted for crimes?
Yes. Yes, he has.
Right.
But you said you want lies to be a crime. You want lying.
Tell me what crimes he committed, George.
Buddy, listen, I can't go through all 91.
Thank you.
I can't go through all 91 charges for these indictments. I think there's 91.
Crimes, George, not charges. Crimes he committed.
Buddy, come on, man. You know that the charges are accusations of him engaging in criminal behavior. My response to you that brought that up was you want to hang on. You want to criminalize what you determine to be lies.
No, I don't, George. And that's not what he said. He didn't say those words.
I
said the people need to be held accountable.
By whom and how? How will they be
lies.
held accountable, Brian? How will they be held accountable?
By being investigated to find out if they lied.
And then if they
Just
lied,
like
then
he's
what?
being
Then what
investigated
happens?
to
We find out
if he
that
lied.
some government organization that you trust that I never will to determine whether or not something's a lie. Then what? Government organization says MSNBC lied. Now what? What happens?
George, I don't have all the answers to that.
Buddy, why do you want them investigated if
to
determining that whether it's a lie or not? Why does it matter then? What are you investigating them towards? What end? Haha, MSNBC, the government determines that what you said is a lie. Carry on.
Well, look at Fox News. Okay, how about lawsuits then? How about lawsuits?
There you go.
George?
That's what we do with the First Amendment is we permit lawsuits by the aggrieved party. So if Donald Trump wants to sue
maybe that's
CNN,
what he's talking about.
Maybe the question we should ask is why hasn't Donald Trump sued these news outlets for their lies? Why hasn't he done it?
I don't know.
It's a good question, George, isn't it?
He never gave any specifics. He never said that he was going to name the things that you said. So that's what I'm saying, George. You say you don't want to live in a country where this guy says things like this. I don't want to live in a country where people go after people, indictments politically.
Brian, I got to correct you, man. I did not say
borders.
I don't want to live in a country where people say this. It's the opposite. I want Donald Trump to be able to reveal the inner workings of his brain and heart all day long without government intervention. What I don't want to do is live in a country where the president of the United States, who has the authority to do the kinds of things that are being suggested here, says, this is how I'm going to treat the First Amendment. If
and
I
what
determine
does he have to do any of that stuff, George? Like I'm saying, these are just words. He's gaslighting.
Oh, come on. So these are lies.
What
He's
could
lying.
He do?
Is he lying?
What could he do? No, he's incensing
he could
people's
arm the
emotions
FCC. He could arm the FCC. Go ahead, Brian.
Right. He could arm the FCC, George. But here's what you don't get about Trump because you hate him so much.
I don't. It's not a question of hating Trump. I don't hate him.
You hate the words he says. You hate the words he says more than the actions he did for this country, which is delusional. But
come on, man.
Just when it comes to
delusional, I'm deluded.
When it comes to Trump, because if you hate his words more than you hate his actions that have been positive for the country,
more than I hate
then
his actions.
George.
Dude,
if you
this is a guy who's making you promises
more than you like his actions, George, then
listen,
it is delusional.
There's this
just about
there's
him.
this binary choice that exists for the Trump Kool-Aid drinkers, and that is you must love everything he does and excuse all the bad things, because if you ever call him out for anything negative, somehow you're diminishing the greatness that is Donald Jesus Trump. That's the problem that we have here is we're not allowed to have conversations where we hold this guy accountable for the garbage he says, and this is garbage. And man, you should embrace this. You should say, I like Donald Trump, but this is garbage. I wish he hadn't said it. That's what you should be saying.
I get it, George.
Brian, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for the phone call. Listen, the other thing is the lawsuit thing that Brian got around to, I agree. And you know where we've seen that play out? Does anyone remember Dominion suing Fox for $1 kajillion and Fox saying, we'll give you all this money, please just go away and don't make us go to court? I do. That's the response to the lies, not the government coming in and threatening your FCC licensure. I'm telling you, folks, you are so short-sighted. If your approach is, I defend Trump in this because this is what needs to happen to MSNBC, what does a Kamala Harris as president do with that kind of authority? You think it's to go after MSNBC and CNN? I wonder who they might go after with whatever tools they have, whether it's FCC or something else. Might it be Newsmax? Brian said, I want the DOJ to investigate, to pull their emails and see where they're getting information. Oh my God. Does anybody remember the Watergate papers? Does anybody remember New York Times versus Sullivan? Does anybody remember any of the things that we asked the Supreme Court to weigh on in defense of the First Amendment and against this totalitarian approach to information? You know, in the criminal justice system, you hear this all the time. It is better that one guilty man go free than for than one free man. It's good that a dozen guilty men go free than one free person or innocent person be held accountable. This is a weird approach to the First Amendment where it says we're willing to crush the First Amendment to go after what we deem to be lies. I'm not willing to do that. Folks, can you imagine what an empowered Joe Biden or Kamala Harris with this approach to the First Amendment would have over the radio? Do you see the battles, by the way, that Salem fights on a daily, monthly, yearly basis to remain free to give you any sort of conversation that hosts have with you? If the libs had their way and they took this Donald Trump approach to the First Amendment, they would end us tomorrow if they could. They would investigate Salem. They would investigate Clear Channel or iHeart or whoever it is now. They would investigate them. Do you remember the fairness doctrine that Reagan blew up? This stuff right here, this is the part that makes me bonkers, man, is that this guy is going to be on the damn ballot next to that other guy who's president right now, who I can't stand as president of the United States. And I'm going to be stuck with having to make a decision between these two people. The guy that can't get it done intellectually, and the dude who says, I will proudly use my authority as president to go after the media for their lies. What the hell is happening to where are conservatives to stand up and say, okay, I love everything you did with the border and the economy and all that, but this was wrong and you should withdraw. By the way, keep in mind, dude never admits a mistake. Never once has he ever admitted a mistake. This is a guy who told the church, I don't need to ask for forgiveness because I've done nothing wrong. But this right here, folks, should scare the crap out of you. And if it sounds like, no, it's good because when he wins, he'll hold MSNBC accountable. And then what? What happens after Trump? You need to protect the First Amendment at every single turn. I mean, I think some of you would love the idea of, hey, we need the DOJ to look into Kyle Clark and 9 News for the stories that they tell. Really? Really? Is that then what? What comes after Trump? What comes after Kyle Clark? Where does this end? Who gets to be the arbiter of enough is enough? We've had it. We've determined now what the truth is. Anybody ever hear of a cat named George Orwell? 1984? We are rapidly approaching a dialogue that is reminiscent of totalitarian governments across the globe. If you say things that disagree with the people that are in power, you get held accountable. Really? I think what makes America great, even if I adamantly am opposed to many of the messages, is that you can do just about any damn thing with communication you want. Just about. To express your disagreement with government. I mean, this isn't even a guy who says, I'm going to hold MSNBC accountable for obscenity or pornography. No, it's for the lies they've told about him. That's what he cares about. Lies told about him. Not about climate change or COVID. He doesn't care about that. It's him. Man, I didn't even intend to get this worked up. There's this poll out here. There is a growing number of Americans who have just lost sight of what freedom is, of what liberty is. Here's this question from this Real Clear Politics poll. This one's horrifying. This is a question of yes or no. Do you think that the government has a responsibility to restrict hateful posts and disinformation on social media platforms, or should they be an open forum of free speech, even if that speech is hateful or inaccurate? 61% say the government has a responsibility to restrict hateful posts and disinformation. 61% of us think that? That's 3 in 5? You want the government to weigh in on what the truth is and what hate is? Holy crap, folks, not me. Tell me which part of the government ever you have trusted to make a decision that puts liberty first. I can't think of it. You know, conservatives were supposed to be about smaller government and the government that provided the most amount of flexibility, even when that liberty was misused, in your opinion, as long as it didn't run afoul of legitimate laws that protected us from what this. Come on. How about this question? Which is better, allowing free speech without government interference or letting the government decide what types of hateful or inaccurate speech should be banned? That's not even social media limited. About 25% say we should let government decide. 1 in 4. Makes me want to spit up in my mouth. These people get ballots. You folks get ballots out there that are saying, yes, cheering on Trump. Absolutely. And Brian's suggestion that this is just gaslighting. Is it? Well, is this guy lying? Like he's not really going to do this? He's just saying this to get votes? And if that in and of itself were true, why would you support that? Why can't we have a Donald Trump that does all the great things that he did, but still adheres to a constitution that he may not like the outcome, but by God, it protects American liberty? This is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that folks would come, I want to hear it. I want to have the conversation. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me which part of government you want to empower to determine what the truth is and what the consequences are when that government agency determines that somebody has said a lie. 303-696-1971. Listen, I don't have time for it. We're just going to cut away for a break. When we come back, we're going to get to Bob and Dean and everybody else calling in. The text as well. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. We got full phone lines. I want to honor those folks that have been hanging on through my little rant there at the end of the last segment. Bob from Denver, you're on 710. Bob, what do you think?
Good morning, George. The secret password is obstruction.
What? What's going on, man? What do you think about all this stuff that I've been ranting about here?
Well, I don't think, well, maybe we do confuse Walter Cronkite with Rush Limbaugh. Same thing, right? It was a perfect phone call. Whether was the perfect phone call Hunter Biden or Russia, if you're listening. Don't know. I just don't. Can't sort it out. There's no facts. But I agree with you.
But who should determine it? That's the part that gets me is, yep, media's lefty. Media doesn't like Trump. All that's true. The Russia collusion, all that stuff's true. But who gets to decide and what are the consequences?
$787 million is the modern day version of forgive me for I have sinned.
Oh, that's a good point right there. That's a big deal.
It's a rare event. It doesn't happen very often.
No, that's an epic amount of money. I mean, I don't know that anybody's ever been sued for what they did and settled for more than that.
I know people that can't count that many zeros. I learned about that in divorce courts. Not everybody agrees with me.
Bob, when you hear this thing, now Brian's approach is, hey, he doesn't really mean it. It's just him gaslighting us, which I think is a synonym for lying. But when you hear stuff like this, does it cause you any greater concern than before? Or are you just like, no, this is just who this dude is, or I don't think it's a big deal?
Well, it depends. The big deal, it depends on whose ox gets gored. And people believe that, that guy is pulling for you. And then in the next breath, they complain that their pockets are empty, they can't pay the damn bills. And obviously the two could never be related. The conservatives, what the hell is trickle down has been remarkably successful. We're in 4 decades of trickle down, and there's little things like, do you remember what Wayne Allard said when the Mexican trucks started rolling across the border?
No, what do you say?
I don't remember. I don't think he was talking a lot.
I don't remember what he said either.
Lauren Boebler this weekend said, the borders are open. Like Ted Cruz, the borders are open. If the senators and Congress people are all screaming on top of their soapboxes, the borders are open, the borders are open. If one is by land, 2 is by sea, whatever the hell it is. Yeah, wow, a lot of stuff changed. What is that gaslighting about anyway? Who's zooming who? And so, yeah, there's plenty of that stuff.
Did you just quote Patti LaBelle? Did you just?
You know what? I'm just damn near old enough to remember. I heard her song and I was like, I know that girl. That girl sings pretty good. Yeah. So the other thing was Wayne Allard. I don't remember what he said, but was one of those Mexican trucks coming across the border in high gear. I made that up. I don't know what gear they're in. Is that one of those trucks, the one that killed, what was it, 5 people there on Denver West?
Yeah. Burned up 4 people, I think, and injured. And it was either 4 or 5. You're right. The one that Kim
Caplis
Kardashian reached out to the governor on. Yep.
Yeah. And I'll bet that load of wood or whatever the hell that guy was carrying, I'll bet that's important stuff, It's not, why that guy is on that road on I-70? It's the money, folks. Follow the money. If you put on those filters, follow the money. And then all of the nonsense that we talk about daily starts to make more sense because you can see how the dots are connected. It's like the old draw the picture by number. You got all these dots and numbers, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and eventually something starts to. Oh, wait a minute! Can you see the giraffe in this picture? No, it must be Mickey Mouse. whatever the hell it is. So you start with one, tell a big lie, and repeat it over and over and over again, and pretty soon we believe. You know, we get down on our knees at that altar, and we believe in those tax cuts. You know what feudalism is?
Yeah, seen pictures. Yeah,
that's where everybody lives in the big guy's tent, right?
Yep.
So we've got a handful of billionaires now after 43 years of trickle down, and some of these folks are living under bridges. And what they might be saying is, you know, if I'm slinging hash at McDonald's and so forth, I all I can do is afford to go from week to week, month to month. I'll never own a house. I'll never own a nice car. I'll never have whatever that American dream was. It's just not working. And, you know, sure, there's drug problems and all that other stuff. Well, these people are obviously defective. Right. That's the fix. So all of the stuff that got done in 2017, I thought that the building the wall at the border, I thought that had some merit. But when he said, you know what, Mexico's going to pay for it, I think Mexico's pretty close to the Western Hemisphere's version of a third-rate country. There's some folks in Mexico doing real well, like the gun smugglers are probably
right, and the drug dudes,
the drug cartels down there are probably better armed than our Marine Corps. Thank God we've got F-16s.
Yeah, well, those are the old ones too. Hey, Bob, let me grab some of these other calls. Thank you for the conversation. I appreciate the common sense approach. 303-696-1971. Bob's line is open. Dean from Denver, you're on 710. Dean, what do you think?
Thanks, George.
Sure.
The real problem, in my opinion, is the fact that in this country, it is basically Fox, Newsmax, and AM talk radio versus everything else. It's the balance of available sources.
Well, what do we do about that?
I don't know. One thing that can be done is I would be in favor of the fairness doctrine.
Really?
Across the board.
Really? I struggle with that because once again, you put the government in the position of being arbiter on what's fair and what needs to be responded to. I mean, if you'll remember, talk radio just wasn't the thing it became after the fairness doctrine went the way of the dodo, and Rush kind of took it to a next level. And so when you talk about the lopsidedness, you're right. But if you look medium to medium, talk radio, conservatives dominate the AM spectrum, dominate it. So suggesting that the fairness doctrine come in, they're not going to weigh it across all media platforms. They will look at AM radio and say, oh, you now need to have just as much Dem stuff on here or lefty stuff. And we know it's a failing model, by the way. Air America is a great example. I just don't know that I want to empower the government to determine what's fair, what's the truth. I mean, do you trust those knuckleheads in there?
Well, George, I agree with you that I think anyone can basically get up there and say whatever they want to a certain extent, unless you're directly threatening someone or, you know, calling for a riot or something. I think Alex Jones should get up there and say whatever he wants.
And he did.
Again,
and he's being sued for it, right? So he did say whatever he wants. And the consequences are someone takes you to court and sues you.
But the imbalance of available sources to the public is literally, I see it as like 8-1, literally.
Do you trust the government to make that decision about like what's the counterbalance to NBC and ABC? Do you trust the government to make that decision? Because the fairness doctrine existed back in the days where there was just the big three, ABC, NBC, and CBS.
It would be applied across the board. Look,
by whom?
A great example of how
would
fairness doctrine. Well, unfortunately, the government.
Yeah, man.
But listen here. Let me make this point. You go back 30 years in Denver. There was. This is an example of how this would work. So you go back 30 years in Denver on AM radio, and it even could have been on 710 AM. Pat Buchanan had his radio show, but he had a sidekick on him. I think his name was Marty, and he was a liberal guy. and they did a three-hour radio show, and they went back and forth and beat each other up every day, and that was some of the best talk radio I've experienced in my lifetime.
But that was a model they chose, right? Like same thing with Crossfire. I remember watching Crossfire as a kid growing up with my dad on CNN, and it was Pat Buchanan and I can't remember his name. I can picture him now. Short guy, bald, super intense. But they would do Crossfire, and I thought that was great. But that wasn't a product of trying to assuage the other side for purposes of passing some sort of governmental litmus test or standard. It was because they thought this would be good television, and it was for a long time. And then it was Mike Kinsley. I remember he was the other guy that was across from Pat all the time. I always thought Pat got the better of them, but that was me. But I get your point. But let the market decide that, right? The marketplace of ideas ought to be the one that wins out here, not some bureaucrat.
But an 8-to-1 imbalance in available sources to the public is not fair. And when Donald Trump says, you know, in this country, if we only had a fair and balanced media, he is correct. It is this division that is just tearing us apart.
So
we need more balance available to the public.
So you think that the folks that watch NBC, CBS, and ABC would go elsewhere other than Fox and maybe Newsmax and ON? They would go somewhere else if the government mandated there be another big time station out there that was more right leaning. Then people would definitely go to that.
No, I'm not talking about on a station level. I'm talking about a show level. Rachel Maddow. And it would be enforced across the board. Rachel Maddow would have her show, but every night she would have a conservative sitting right next to her, and they would debate the issues every night.
I'm not sure that people want to tune in to see a debate every night. What if they just wanted to? Hang on. What if they just want to tune in?
That's the problem of the people.
But what if they want to tune in to listen to Rush Limbaugh and just Rush, or they want to watch Mark Levin and just Mark Levin? Why should Mark, to get his points out, to express his opinions? So then you're
admitting that we only listen to what we want to hear, aren't you?
Absolutely correct. I think most Americans drink out of the trough of their choice when it comes to information. 100% agree. That's not a weakness in what's available. That's a weakness in our educational system and who we are, that we don't pursue other information. I don't think the government has any role in trying to fix that. Not at the media level.
The balance of information that the average everyday working family gets from our airwaves is way off balance and needs to be adjusted.
So the
I'm
government
not referring
should
to
make
the
sure
diehards like us.
The government should make sure that certain information is jammed into the homes of certain people. They have to have it. They can't just have one view. They have to have the other view as dictated by the government.
I've given you my best solution. I don't know how else to fix this.
Dean, I appreciate the comment.
Imbalance needs to be fixed.
I guess who's doing the fixing is what matters to me, and who determines what the fix is. Dean, thanks for the phone call. Dean's line is open at 303-696-1971. Brandon, I promise I'm going to get to you as well as the other call coming in right now and the texts that are showing up here. I'll get to those. I got to tell you about Daniel J. Caplis, the J, not for justice, but it should be. Dan and Barbara Wahid, you know who they are by now. I mean, I tell you about them every single day. And what I tell you is these are two trial goers, which you can't say about most of your firms. Most of your firms out there that advertise that they do this kind of victim work, personal injury work, they're settlement firms. They get a number of cases in. Their goal is to settle them as quickly as they can and keep that flow going to generate the most amount of bucks for them in the firm. They're the folks that advertise on the sides of trains and buses and all that other stuff. And it's not that they can't do good by people. They just can't do as much good as Dan and Barbara because they only take the righteous cases. They're not in it to just quickly churn and get a couple bucks. That's not their goal. Their goal is to maximize the justice that you can get from the person or organization that hurt you, that took away something that has changed your life for the worse, whether it's through negligence or recklessness or sometimes intentional conduct. They will step up to the plate and fight for you. They're not in the quick hit business. They're in the, we're going to get you the best solution, and we will fight as hard as we can as long as you tell us to keep doing it. And if it ends up in court, well, woe be they that underestimate Dan and Bob are in the courtroom. And there have been a lot of huge verdicts, 7, 8-figure verdicts out there from companies that didn't give them the approach that they should have, didn't take them seriously. You give them a call, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or check them out at dancaplislaw.com. That's Caplis, Caplis law.com. When we come back, Brandon, Sarah, the other call that's coming in is George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Have to confess, blasphemy on my part. I had attributed who's Zoom and who to Patty LaBelle. That was so wrong. Eric texted and reminded me that is the Aretha Franklin. I am embarrassed and sheepishly so. I admit to you, made that huge mistake. Going right back to the phone lines. It's Brandon from Denver. You're on 710. Brandon, what do you think?
Hey, George, you're awesome. You are awesome.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
You are. There was a time when listening to you, I thought, well, George is occasionally trying to get things fired up and get people to call in, and it's good radio. You know, I used to think it's good radio, but I truly believe that the feelings that you have when Trump puts this stuff out, I think they're genuine. I think that it really does get to you on some level, and it's okay. I mean, I think you have the right to put your feelings out there, and Trump needs to have people like you challenging him. You know, it's the 21st century. Media, Constitution, speech, Constitution. It's the 21st century.
But what does that mean? Tell me what you mean by that.
What that means is these are very, very old ideas which need to be respected and are still relevant today. However, the tech and the way that people can get information to the people via speech, via news, media, okay, is way different than it was in 1776. It's way, so people can get information. You're not riding on a horse from town to town just to send a letter, right? Like,
true.
Things are fast. Yeah. So the idea is good. We need freedom of speech, freedom of the press. However, the Democrats are ahead of the Republicans because they used media in a way where they just get their message out, like spreads like wildfire, and they've been having a lot of advantages. And so Trump, he is, you know, he is team Republican, but he is an innovator. He's a businessman, things like that. So he's going to be on the edge and trying to get that advantage. So he kind of operates like a dim wood. And here's the thing. He says some things. How often do Democrats go into communities, make a bunch of promises, and then they disappear and that community has got nothing? I mean, that has been going on for years. And so Trump is saying, well, this is the game. I'm a winner. You know, I'm putting up buildings and all this. I need a win. I need to deal with the banks or whatever. He's a winner. So he's like, well, I'm going to play some of that game too. There are checks and balances, George. There are checks and balances. Some of this is hot air. Many of the people who support him, they know.
You don't believe it, then, is what you're saying. And Brandon, I gave you all the time I have left this out, but you don't believe him when he says he wants to do that.
What he may want to, but guess what? This is the United States of America.
I'm glad you said that. And Brandon, good way to end. I'm sorry I can't take you longer, but that music's playing. That means Billy actually doesn't even have the power to stop this from happening. This is going to be taken away from us in about 5 seconds. We'll keep the conversation going with Sarah and others. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KUS. It's the final hour of the Tuesday show. You can go back and listen to the 6 o'clock first segment. We had Mark Levin on. He has a book that before it even launched, just through pre-sales, became Amazon's #1 bestseller. It's called The Democrat Party Hates America, hate underlined in red. Go back and listen to that interview. I thought it was great. Nice enough guy to give a shout out to my pops for his birthday. Happy birthday, Dad. We have been talking about, I'm going to continue the conversation with our full phone lines here, Sarah, Jay, and Rose, about two things that are going on here simultaneously. One, there is a post that was put out on Truth Social by the once and potentially future president of the United States, Donald Trump, which suggests that MSNBC and media outlets like it are guilty of what he called country-threatening treason, and that when he's elected president, he said that openly and proudly that he will thoroughly scrutinize the lamestream media for their knowing, dishonest, and corrupt coverage of people, things, and events, and then threatens whether or not they should be able to use the, quote, very valuable airwaves of the USA free, end quote. They are a true threat to democracy. Think about that, man. They are a true threat to democracy and are, in fact, the enemy of the people. The fake news media should pay a big price for what they've done to our once great country. It's hard to know if what he means by that is the big price being the sentence for treason, which is death, or imprisonment, or if it's just some huge fine every time some governmental agency that really acts as government censors determines whether or not they have lied. Now, along with that, there's a real clear opinion research poll that just came out that also talks about censorship and the First Amendment. And some of these answers just, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on with America, but listen to this. These are yes or no. Do you think the government has a responsibility to restrict hateful posts and disinformation on social media platforms? 61.3% said yes. Really? The government should be. Here's another one, which is better: allowing free speech without government interference, or letting the government decide which types of hateful or inaccurate speech should be banned. 23.3%, about 1 in 4, say let the government decide. Here's another one. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. You'd got to believe that conservatives would be 100% behind that statement. But according to this right here, only 38.9% of those Americans polled say they strongly agree with that statement. Here's another one. Do you think speech should be legal under any circumstances or legal only under certain circumstances? 37.1% legal only under certain circumstances. I'm telling you, man, the founders of this country are spinning around in their graves with those wigs intact. Here's another. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. Strongly agree, somewhat disagree, or strongly agree. Only 47.9% strongly agree. More than 50% either somewhat agree. That's the First Amendment, people. Over 52% either somewhat agree, somewhat disagree, or strongly disagree. This is, I don't know what we're doing. How about this? Even though the U.S. Constitution guarantees freedom of speech, the government has placed some restrictions on it. That's true. Overall, do you think Americans have too much freedom to speak freely, too little freedom to speak freely, or it's the right amount? 24.4%, 1 in 4, too much freedom. Too much freedom to speak freely. And then you get a guy here who was the president, wants to be president again, who calls the media he disagrees with not only liars, which he's entitled to, but says that they're country-threatening treason, and he's going to go after them if he's elected president. 303-696-1971. Sarah it says from Glenwood Springs. Sarah, thanks for listening. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. That survey yesterday was shocking how few people actually believe in free speech anymore. But the other thing I wanted to say was think it is ironic that Trump came out with his tweet today after that survey, because I think you and many people in the press are going to start talking about the importance of free speech today, which is a great thing. I'm also concerned about what the government has already done as far as free speech goes. I was listening to your caller who said the actions of the government lately are more frightening than Trump's tweet to me. You know, we've got the court case, Missouri versus Biden. We had government agencies and officials pressuring social media. You know, we had, during COVID, the government was pressuring media to take down factual information. So that to me is kind of scary.
What does it make you think, though, in terms of these comments? I mean, what you've said, and I agree with you, is First Amendment's big deal, freedom of speech, big deal, that poll concerning. And maybe you're right. Maybe Trump is playing off of what he saw out of that poll. I don't know. But does it concern you at all? And this is, let me say this in response to some of the other stuff you said and some of the other callers have said. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. I can condemn the Biden White House for the overstepping of the powers it doesn't have, including just simply decreeing that everybody gets to have a certain amount of loan forgiveness, the interference of the government with social media. I don't like that either. But this is a dude who wants to be president, who's from my party, who espouses to be a conservative, and has basically said the First Amendment is, shrugs it off like, not that big a deal, because I'm talking about truth.
Well, I think the investigation we need to have with the media is the collusion between government, unnamed, unsourced people influencing our media to report untrue stories. I think that's an investigation we should have. And the leaks from the CIA, from the FBI, into our media that influence public opinion politically. It's a political agenda.
I do want...
So the government needs to just not... We need to know what our government is doing and the lies they are spreading for their hidden agenda with the media. So I think opening those doors... I
don't mind that, but if it's investigating government employees or government agencies for what they're leaking, the one concern I'd have is we don't want to discourage whistleblowers. We want whistleblowers in government. That's what leads to some of the revelations that you and I just don't know about. But at the same time, I don't want to say, let's find out what the government's doing with the media. Now let's go after the media's emails to see who's communicating with them. I don't like that either. If it's an internal investigation to determine who's out there leaking information or spreading dishonest stories, I'm with you. But when it extends to those media companies, and we're now going to start issuing subpoenas and search warrants for communications with media outlets, no, thank you. I'm not interested in the government taking on that role.
We've already done that.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
The government's already done that. They did that with January 6th. They got all of Fox News' internal communications.
Yeah. Well,
and then the other thing I wanted to point out, like Jack Smith, his indictment in D.C. is all based on free speech. I mean, Jonathan Turley wrote an article in The Hill, and he talked about how if you take out all the free speech concerns here, there's nothing left. They're already going after Trump. You know, the government is trying to put him in jail for his speech. And that's what the whole D.C. indictment is about.
Yeah, I don't know which case. Are you referring to the January 6th case? The one out of D.C., that Jack Smith one? Because the other ones, like the one out of Mar-a-Lago, that's not a free speech case.
No, but the D.C. case is. And Jonathan Turley said he took a red pen to everything that's protected speech, and there was nothing left.
I think there are some real problematic issues with that January 6th one. That, in my opinion, that was definitely a political move to try to figure out a way to paint the president with responsibility at the criminal level for what took place. I have problems with that as well, but I don't see that being an issue with the Mar-a-Lago prosecution. I think that the New York prosecution by Alvin Bragg is completely politically motivated and junk, but that one isn't really a First Amendment one either. That's something different too. So
Georgia has a lot of First Amendment issues in it too.
There's some First Amendment stuff in there as well. But that's an aside from
and so, like, for me, it's like the government has been doing this, and it's like we
But so
need
you're
to
okay with expanding it to
know. We deserve
MSNBC
to
and
know.
Fox?
What's that?
You're saying we should extend the federal government's reach into more of these media outlets, whether it's MSNBC, Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, any of those things. We want the government to be more involved in scrutinizing where they get the information they report on.
I want to know when the government is influencing MSNBC and Fox to report untrue information. I want to know those FBI leakers, like Andrew McCabe. The whole Russia thing was such that hampered the entire Trump administration, and it was all based in lies, and those lies came from within the government.
I'd like to know what the government is doing to push stories to the media as well, but not at the risk of making the media outlets subject to the government. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in knowing who from the government is putting it out there. But you and I don't want to discourage whistleblowers. We want there to be whistleblowers.
No. We need to have whistleblowers, but I do want more journalistic integrity. I just dismiss
who enforces that though? Who enforces the journalistic integrity?
Documents. I know, and I think that's the problem. It's like I feel like we've passed that Rubicon. It's like I don't want the government enforcing it because they've been trying to do that for the last 7 years. I mean, if you said the wrong thing on Twitter, you got your account, taken away. Due to pressure from an FBI agency.
That may have been an outcome encouraged by the government, but that wasn't the government making that decision. That was Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn or who.
Yes, they made that decision, but I mean, I've been listening to the oral arguments in Missouri v. Biden, and they talk about the undue pressure put on these.
I don't want the government putting pressure on any of them. I don't mind, and I don't think you would mind either, if the government sent out information saying, hey, this thing got posted. It's not true. I mean, I don't mind the government trying to put out information that corrects misinformation, but I do mind the pressure put on them. And that's what this thing suggests to me from Donald Trump. And that is
because the government's already doing it. They're already deciding what's true. Like you just said, if they say this is not true, and in COVID, they put out all this stuff saying you can't, this is dangerous misinformation. And now we find out, oh, that was true. The government was pushing us to take down
some of it. I mean, we found out for sure that Fauci was liar, pants on fire about the masks and stuff like that. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and we found out the government officials, like they the whole origins of COVID, they were lying through their teeth about.
Well, we're still looking at, I think they're still looking into that. I don't know that we have a definitive answer on that yet, but I do want to know the answer. I want the government to look into that as well.
Right. And so that's the investigation. I want to know what the government's been doing to pressure the media or telling the media untrue stories they then publish.
But I do not want them getting into the media's business. And I'm worried about that. Sarah, great phone call. Thank you for at least this portion of the conversation. And I'm glad you're listening to that Missouri v. Biden, the oral arguments, which you can get on podcasts. I just think that makes you a better voter. Rose, you're on 710 KNUS. Rose, what do you think?
Yeah, hey, I was thinking about the power of the government and the globalists. Is power truly scared that they can't control love?
What do you mean?
They can't control love. I mean, we all love in certain ways, right? Like you love your mom, your dad, your children, your wife. They can't control that. And so they're putting certain stipulations on us, like the most resilient parasite is an idea, good or bad. And if that enters into our brain, is nearly impossible to get rid of. So are we being fed bad information?
By whom?
Every media and every conversation we have.
Well, so hold on. So regardless of whether it's Fox or MSNBC, you think they're all up to no good and trying to put ideas in your head?
No, not necessarily. I'm saying the most resilient idea is a parasite. It grows in our brain. We can't control it.
Well, I think it would have to be an idea that resonates with you, because I've heard a lot of ideas that I quickly reject and never, ever ponder ever again.
very good, and so do I. But once it enters your brain, you ponder it. You realize, is there a possibility that this is true? I mean, can you
isn't that
actually
just
get rid of that
critical
idea?
thinking? Isn't that just critical thinking? I guess the question I have for you is, are you bothered by that? And if so, how do we protect against ideas that the media wants to put out there?
Well, there's no vaccine, and the news broadcast controls, our human input, correct?
Well, I don't know that there's no vaccine, and I know you're playing on this analogy here, but I think that the reason you're able to critically think and come to conclusions on your own and reject ideas that you don't find to be credible is through your own life experience and education and your principles. So that's that's the protection against a bad idea. If someone shows up and says, "I think we ought to own people," right? Like you'd say, that's not an idea you're going to ponder. You're going to dismiss that idea and say, "Nope, been there, done that. Not the way we go here in America." So is that a viral idea? No. Is that a parasite that's going to play in my head? Not for one more second than it took me to say the words.
Because you believe in some sort of love.
Uh-huh.
So is power truly trying to control love?
I don't, Rose, I'm struggling here because it's not about love for me. It's about liberty. I don't know these people, and I don't have to love those people, but I do love liberty. And if that's what you're talking about is just my affiliation or my affinity for something, maybe that's it. But Rose, in fact, let me just ask you before I move on, and we'll get to Jay and some other callers here. Tell me, how does all of this tie in to either this poll by Real Clear Politics or this statement by Trump that he will openly and proudly scrutinize the mainstream media and put at risk their licenses to be on air?
Well, he was talking about the First Amendment, correct?
I think what he says implicates the First Amendment. He never mentions the First Amendment. I'm not sure he knows what it says.
Okay, so if he was talking about the First Amendment, free speech, all that kind of stuff, is it related to us as human beings where we actually get our power from? I believe we get our power from love.
Rose, I'm going to be honest with you. My heart may be too small to appreciate the wisdom that you're sharing with me right now. I'm going to you know what, though? You've given me a thought that's going to act like a parasite in my noggin and kick around there for a while. Rose, thank you for the call, 303-696-1971. Jay, and Rose's line is open. Give us a call. I promise I'll get to you. I just got to do a couple things here before we keep this conversation going. Also, the text too. A lot of folks texting in, even about the poll, which I'm glad that some folks looked it up. Gay Ribble with Empower Home Team at Keller Williams. They're the folks that you need in this challenging economy. You heard Amy from Alpine in the last hour, actually in the 7 o'clock hour, talk about some of the challenges, like the rates are going to be going up again, that September was a super challenging month for the market, and that long-term solutions require a long-term strategy. Well, there is no longer-term strategy than buying a home. That's like usually a 30-year plus endeavor. That's if you don't refinance. If you want to get the best price for your home and at the same time put yourself in a position to get the best price for the dream home you're trying to get into in this challenging market, with finances being the way they are, then you got to call Gay Ribble. The Empower Home Team sells for more money than other realtors do. They make you more money. They sell faster than other realtors. Here's just some of the statistics they have. $31,500 on average more dollars. They sell homes 2 times faster. They put 6.1% more money in your pocket on most of these deals. Give them a call, 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD, or go to gayhasthebuyers.com. That's gay, Gaye, hasthebuyers.com. She's terrific. And I think, isn't she coming in the studio soon? Billy, don't we have Gay coming in? Oh, are you kidding? Billy says she was supposed to come in, but I have that day off. Well, in the next week or so? Son of a oh, you know what it is? I'll bet it's a week from Thursday because that's the only day in the next 2 weeks I had. Yeah. Well, we're going to get Gay in here. Love me some Gay. You should too. Give her a call. Hey, we're going to come back to full phone lines. Jay, Evan, Joe, all the text. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Why should you buy your next vehicle at Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram? We make car shopping easy. We have a huge inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles. We can even custom order. We make it easy. Easy financing, friendly staff. And when it comes to quality service, our expert technicians keep your vehicle in top shape. Visit us today off of Highway 25 and Plum Creek, or shop online at castlerockcdjr.com. Castle Rock Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. Car shopping made easy. Why
George Brauchler right back with you here, 710 KNUS. Going to get right back to the phone lines. I don't trust the government when it comes to telling the truth. Why would I trust them to determine what is the truth when it comes to the media? Jay, you're on 710. What do you think?
Oh, I think it's a fascinating subject. So I just want to take back just a little bit of time, if you give me a second. Back in the 60s, 70s, we had these things called must-carry laws. So, for instance, Channel 2479 in Denver were very popular. The Channel 6 was PBS, and then Channel 12 was out of Broomfield. So we all decided in the broadcast world to say Channel 12 is just really not important because it's Broomfield, it's not prime time and all that. So we moved it up to like Channel 47 on the cable dial. And that didn't work because must-carry rules, just like with your radio station, you have a slot where you are allowed that slot in the frequency, and you're an important slot. 710 is actually a great frequency in AM. So this must-carry rule required that those TV broadcast stations, and this applies, of course, to today's world with the internet, that Channel 12 has, Mr. Ross, who paints paintings, and Mr. Rogers, and Sesame Street. And a lot of the big operators didn't want them there because there was no commercial space to overwrite commercials. Remember, it's about the money. And the other facts are that they thought, well, the folks would rather watch ESPN or WTBS or whatever the stations were at that time. So you go to current day, we can use these CFRs, which the CFR is 47.76, to force the government to stay out of the broadcast world, because now it's a bi-directional world. We can talk back, not only on the internet, but I can call you this morning and tell you what's on my mind. And how it applies to what you folks are talking about today is we know that people from the Biden administration and the Obama administration went to these electronic media stations and told them to stifle information about elections, and they didn't like what was being said and so forth. And wouldn't we all love to do that in our lives and in our businesses?
Sure.
And that has to stop. And we can modify these must-carry and freedom of speech rules. It's very simple, and apply them to the internet.
How would we
do that? Broadcast.
How do we do that?
Well, the internet isn't just a placid bidirectional communications device. It's actually more important than these TV stations. Every day, people are picking up their phones 150 times. They're not doing that televisions today.
No, but how do you regulate the internet sources of news in that way? The FCC has a good hook for broadcast, right? Because there's a limited amount of bandwidth, and they get to step in to make sure it's used. So that's an easy one. Internet, no such limitations.
Well, if the intercontinental United States, we do have the capability. I'm with the FCC. So we do have that ability. And also, if in fact we had the ability,
but there's no bandwidth issues, right? Like you could have 8 billion news outlets on the internet, right? They don't need to go to the government and say, please let me be on the internet.
But preferential placement is where it's at. Everybody's using Google and Yahoo and just a few search engines, and that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where that's where the cable operator says you can't be on channel 12. You're going to be on 47. Well, you need to be in the sweet spot. So when George Brauchler says, hey, I don't like what's going on here, well, there's somebody that's not going to like that. And they're going to want to move you from 710 to the top of the dial and the AM dial, which is a horrible spot. And that's why they're trying to pull the radios out of our cars. They don't like what we're saying. They don't like the fact that I can call in and talk to you about whatever. And one of the other placement items.
I do think the AM radio thing is a problem for us because conservatives dominate it. But I think that what I've heard about it is it's a cost thing. They have to put in a different kind of thing into the car to pick up the AM signal that they could just save a couple bucks.
No, not at all. Cheapest thing in the car is an AM radio.
Cheapest. I'm sorry, what's that?
Expensive. The cheapest thing in a car is an AM radio. The internet portion. I mean, they're putting satellite tracking systems in all the cars.
Billy says it's an electric vehicle thing.
Okay, well, electric vehicle, perhaps because of the buzz and the interference. But fact of the matter is we could do it all over the internet as well. But they're just trying to stop the freedom of information from coming to us. They don't like the fact that we can talk back and make changes.
Jay, to circle back to this Trump thing, then you hear this Truth Social tweet or whatever the hell they call it, a trutherism or something. What do you think about his suggestion that the government should go scrutinize media, especially as a dude who's an FCC? Do you think that the FCC should be empowered with more tools to look into what the media does?
Well, no, you want to treat it more like a water pipe. We're not in control of the content. A long time ago, I personally tried to put a stop to Playboy TV, Hustler TV, and Penthouse TV because I'm strictly against pornographics. And
I'll be honest,
lost.
the teenage me did not like that approach, but go ahead.
Well, you need to get out of the house more, pal.
Yeah,
There's the real things outside the door. That's all
believe
I'm
me,
saying.
I found
Me
that
too.
out for sure.
Me too. I got it. But what I'm trying to say is this. I lost because the cable operators were making a tremendous amount of money on pornographic television going to people's homes. And I think it's horrific. And it still is going on today. And the internet, of course, is a big factor in that. But it's just a big pipe. But if you try to clog one thing out of the pipe, just one particular item like 710 radio or Playboy, that's where we all lose freedom of speech and we lose our freedom of rights. So that's the reason why that point lost, is because Playboy is bad. I get it. Everybody got it, but we couldn't stop it. But we have to allow the free people to just change the channel and move the dial.
Great. Happy to do that.
Yeah. And then let me go on to one other thing. Trump knows, and I'm sure his advisors know, he has some smart advisors, that he was played in the electronic media world. However, the guy that used to run his electronic media that helped put him in office used Facebook handily, and Facebook and the other media centers were really upset because they used electronic media to make Trump look really good before his first election in 2016. Big, tall guy, really, really smart at what he did.
Yeah.
So, the media is good. I'm not saying the media is bad. It's not the people. But when you say that George Brauchler or Billy can't talk about homeless people in Denver, yeah, it stinks and it puts a clog in the system, and it does stop our freedom of information from flowing. And I think there's another way to do it.
Jay, I appreciate the expertise you brought to the call, man, and the insight. Jay's line is open, 303-696-1971. Evan from Denver, you're on 710. What do you think, Evan?
Well, I pretty much always agree with you, George.
I'm so sorry.
My only statement is, unfortunately, I believe the federal government has gotten way, way too big, and I can't overemphasize that. They've influenced my life tremendously, in many ways positively. But when you get someone like Biden, flat Obama, shutting down oil, shutting down petroleum drilling, telling us what we can say and think, it needs to be seriously modified. That's a pretty bland statement, but anyhow.
So in light of that, and I agree with you, man, I think the federal government has blown so far past what the founders of this Constitution in the country believed would be acceptable. But given that, when you hear the claimed conservative choice for Republicans, the MAGA guy, Trump, come out and say, hey, if I'm elected president, when I'm elected president, I'm going to go scrutinize all these media companies and they shouldn't be able to have access to our airwaves for free and all this other stuff. You supportive of that? Or are you like, nope, this is another unnecessary growth of federal power?
Unfortunately, we got to go back even beyond that and say it's just evidence that there really is no education going on in our education system. People should come out with a good idea of the Constitution, what their rights are, where they come from, why we have them, be able to add, subtract, multiply, read history, but that no longer goes on either.
No.
So we're too busy worrying about whether you're a transsexual or what the color of your skin is. So the whole thing, unfortunately, good friend, is it's a pot boiler at this point. Who the hell knows what kind of a fish will jump out of it next? But you do have a good show, and I catch it whenever I can. And I missed my statement on what people should wear. If you go to the Air Force Academy, you'll see people well-dressed, well-shaved, well-groomed. And that should go for this.
You're talking about the dress code comment we have. Listen, I don't disagree, Evan. My kids went to a charter school where it was always collared shirts, either green or blue, and some sort of khaki shorts or pants, depending upon the weather and stuff like that. And I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. And what I see
Totally
coming out of middle
agree.
schools and high schools, buddy, I'm telling you. I know when I was in school, my parents were aghast at the way girls dressed when I was in high school. The way girls
Yeah.
dress these days, sometimes, and this is like after school, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? Which dad is letting that happen if they know? I mean, it's crazy.
Yes, you can go in the mall. I go to Cherry Creek Mall a lot, and my father. One of my fondest memories of my father is the belt coming around the loops, because it was going to happen again. And I see the way a lot of people are dressed, a lot of the girls are dressed, and I guess corporal punishment. A certain amount of it is good for you. That's all there is to it.
Hey, Evan, thanks for the phone call, my man. 303-696-1971 is Evan's line. Joe and Jack, and now whoever's calling in on Evan's line, I'll get to you, I promise. Got to cut away for a quick break after I tell you about QC Kinetix. QC Kinetix, if that name sounds familiar, it's because for months now, I've been telling you about how these folks have figured out a way to give you a pain-free existence without any cutting, without any stabbing, without any massive quantities of pills, or any pills for that matter. They use you through regenerative medicine to fix you. And I'm talking about the pain in your joints, the hips, the knees, elbows, ankles, shoulders, whatever it is. Call these folks up and demand they answer your questions. I mean, you're obviously going to be courteous, and they will too. But I'm saying go to the website at qckinetics.com. Check it out. And see what frequently asked questions there are, find out the information. Google search the heck out of this stuff, or whatever, DuckDuckGo, whatever you use, search the heck out of it. But don't stop there. Pick up the phone and call 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986, and ask them every question you can think of before you make the decision to sign up with them and get that pain-free existence that you deserve. 303-900-8986. That's qckinetics.com. When we come back, Joe, Jack, everybody else, the text to George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here. Final segment of the show at 710 KNUS, going right back to the phone lines. Joe from Denver, you're on 710. What do you think, sir?
Good morning, George.
Good morning.
Staying well informed is hard. It takes a lot of work. And if you're talking about truth in media, people need to be more diligent in in verifying the sources within their news. It takes a lot of work, but unfortunately, most people either don't have the time, I'm assuming, or, aren't interested in putting in the work to stay well informed, which means looking for articles and information about, articles and information from every angle you can think.
Yeah.
I'm everything from Breitbart to Mother Jones, because it just depends on where the story is. But if somebody is making a point, I may jump, to an opposite oriented news source in order to get a different opinion. Or instead of reading national news, when there's a particular event, I'll go to that local city's news. You get more information reading about the fires in Hawaii from local Hawaiian news sources than you are going to get from the AP.
What do you do? That's all smart stuff. I agree with you. But what does that do to this suggestion by the would-be next president of the United States that, hey, I think when I'm president, government's going to start scrutinizing these media companies and perhaps put at risk their access to airwaves?
The ironic twist of the freedom-loving people clamping down on freedom of speech that they don't like. That's what it is. And, there was, again, you have to be careful. And the lady who was a little bit earlier, who was talking about, wanting to investigate these news companies. Well, does she even know Fox News paid almost $1 billion, and I'm sure we'll be paying more, for lying about the election results, which has generated this huge division in our country. So is she too busy? Is she not interested? Is she seeking the truth but denying the truth to herself? It's all those things, I suppose. But people need to be more diligent. Don't trust anybody. Double verify.
No, I agree with you. Hey, Joe, good call. Thanks, man. Good advice. Joe's lines open 303-696-1971. We're going to go to Jack in just a second here. But not before I tell you about our buddy Mitch Flory with the Art of Granite. I have told you before, and I want to get Mitch back in here because I want to ask how much of what he does these days, just because of the real estate market, isn't like not just upgrading the kitchen and the master bathroom or any bathrooms, which he does and he's been doing forever, but is finished basements. Like I talked to a guy about, hey, what would it look like to fit? Every plan that I've heard from these guys in the basements I've been to all involve some sort of like a wet bar somewhere or some sort of a countertop thing. And I'll bet you Mitch would do that as well, because he's been doing it forever in the countertop world. Now, the website, it's misleading, folks, and I don't think he intends to mislead. It's called The Art of Granite, theartofgranite.com. But he does so much more than granite. He does the marble, he does quartz, and the quartz stuff is like the man-made stuff you can do with just about anything to make it look just about any way you'd like it to look. This guy's been doing it forever, and he does it with a handshake. He looks you in the eye. He gives you his cell phone number to call, not just some general ring through number at some customer service place. When I tell you 303-386-5919, 303-386-5919, that's Mitch Floria's cell phone number out of this big company. And then if you go down to about 6th Avenue in Colfax, you get to see all the other great stuff that they do. I'm telling you, it's much more impressive in person than online. I love the website, but it's much more impressive in person. Here's the other kicker. Wholesale prices. Yep. Passes on that savings to you. But wait, there's more. You tell him you're a George Show listener, a 710 listener. He then throws in the bathroom countertop package for free with the kitchen countertop package. If you just want to do one room, like the kitchen, he'll throw in the sink for free. You give him a call. Check him out at artofgranite.com. That's Mitch Floria, superstar. Jack from Evergreen, you're on 710. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, everything will be settled in the next election. I think you're worrying about nothing, but you're making a very good show and you're getting everybody stirred up.
But what do you mean there's nothing to worry about? What does that mean?
The voter, it'll all be settled but in the next election. I'm sure that's where it's all going to go. But what I wanted to say to you was, you're talking about things that Trump has said with respect to when he gets in office. And the whole thing with freedom of press, you're absolutely right. The government should have nothing whatsoever to do with influencing it one way or another. It reminds me of late 40s, early 50s in Argentina, when one of the newspapers printed something critical about Juan Perón, his wife, Evita. She sent the police department out to pull all the tanker trucks that were delivering ink to the newspapers so they wouldn't have any ink to print with. And she did that for about 2 weeks so they get the message. And that's what happens when government has a heavy hand. And we really don't want that. But I don't really think you're going to have to worry about it. I think it's all going to get straightened out.
How do you think it'll get worked out in the election? Like, tell me what your prediction is.
Well, my prediction would be is all these abuses of the press in the past. I mean, for the most part, most people don't listen to any of that stuff anyway. And I suppose there is an influence there, but there's no way to control that. And I think Trump's smart enough to know that.
So you think he's just saying stuff to say stuff? He has no intention of doing it.
Let me jump to the more important statement he made. He also said that when he gets in, he'll take and deport all the people that came into this country illegally. Does he have the power to do that? I think he does. I mean, what do you think?
Nope. I don't think power, maybe power is too strong of a word. I don't think logistically, realistically, it could ever happen. But I also don't think he can just say, hey, you're here illegally, I'm going to deport you. They've got to be grabbed up. They've got to be processed out. I mean, you can't just look at someone and go, Juan, you're here illegally, we're putting you on a plane. There's a different process in place here. So could he do it? Yes, but will he? I think he'll have about as much success with that as he will about building the wall.
What would President Brauchler do?
Oh, good Lord, man. First off, we would secure the wall through a combination of things. It's not just the physical wall, but we would secure the wall. I would go back to the stay out of America until you've got the right to come in here model, instead of granting asylum to everybody just based on this blanket. Hey, well, you're from Venezuela. They're the flavor of the day. Come on in.
Well, does he have the right to deport them? Should they be deported? Can they be deported? You already said they can be.
I do think they can be deported, but
should they? Let's jump to should they.
Yeah, it's going to depend too, right? Like, I'll give you an example. The 4-year-old kid that's drug across the border and ends up living here for 10 years, here illegally. There's no question, here illegally. Do you deport the kid?
No, you can't. You can't take the rule of law and destroy it with emotionality, George. You should have learned that first year in law school.
But buddy, it's the rule of law isn't. Listen, 2 people drive drunk down the same stretch of road with the same BAC. One is a 21-year-old girl on her birthday. The other one's a 54-year-old dude with 2 priors. You don't treat them the same. Rule of law is the same. You don't apply it the same way to them because justice factors into that. Same thing here.
If you steal a loaf of bread because you're hungry, or you steal a loaf of bread just because you're a thief, is it the same crime, George?
Yep, it's theft, but it doesn't get punished the same way. It doesn't get treated the same
All right,
way.
let somebody with a brain talk to you. I've had enough.
All right. Jack, thanks, man. And the timing couldn't be more perfect because now the music starts. Hey, great show, folks. I wish I could have gotten to more of the text because some of them are pretty good in here, including one who said, I'm an elitist compared to the DJT. Hey, my thanks to Mark Levin. Go check out his book, The Democrat Party Hates America. It's already #1 on Amazon. You just keep it up there until the libs start taking it seriously. I'll be back tomorrow with Billy. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.